This program deals with devil worship and satanic beliefs. It contains explicit scenes and descriptions of violent crimes and rituals.
Americans are asking, who attacked our country?
You have declared a subliminal jihad against the United States. Can you tell us why?
Everything pertaining to what's happening has never come to the surface. The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives.
And night fell on a different world.
And Iblis is thinking, I should be getting this position, not Adam, and this guy is created from dirt.
And how does the army feel about you being head of the Temple of Set?
And the conspiracy theorists can say what they will, but
I want you to give me power over Adam, and I want you to give me soldiers and minions and all of these things.
The people had so much to gain and had such an ulterior motive for putting me in a position I'm in. We'll never let the true facts come about more to the world.
And I want you to be able to give me the ability to whisper into the hearts of mankind.
And who was the grotto leader? Don't remember his name. You don't remember the name of a person who involved you in murder?
Now these people are in very high positions, yeah? Yes.
Welcome back to Subliminal Jihad, episode 47. I am your co-host, Dimitri.
I'm Khaled.
And today, we're back for the fourth installment of the Grotto of Truth Q&A.
Yes, Q&A 4. Here we are.
It's been another productive
January
month.
31st,
Yeah.
2021.
These are the first batch of questions from our new year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a pretty good, we got a pretty good baker's dozen this time from the Grotto.
Oh, yeah, we do. 12. Yeah, somehow I felt like there were fewer this time, but I guess there aren't. And there's even an 11A and 11B, so we'll see. Yeah.
But very, we got some substantive questions here, and I think we can make good time. But once again, I guess we would like to thank the Grotto for their contributions, for their energy, for their spicy takes. Just it's been a good month. There's been a lot of crazy stuff going on in January 2021, and the Grotto felt like, I guess by definition, a grotto would give you kind of shelter from any kind of storm that was coming. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
yes.
There was some kind of storm that came in January, and now we're sitting in the middle of the great short squeeze revolt of 2021.
True, right, the GameStop thing. I guess maybe this is the 10 days of darkness that Q predicted, because all the base hedge fund capitalists are in trouble, and that's anti-patriotism. What if General Flynn and his family have some assets that are in danger because of this? Although, I feel like GameStop is owned by some of the biggest asset holders in America or something.
It can't not be, especially now at this point. Just as for anybody that didn't get in on the short selling, why wouldn't they buy GameStop or AMC or Build-A-Bear or Nokia right now, or Dogecoin for that matter?
Right,
everybody,
yeah.
I think everybody made a little money off Dogecoin this last week. We'll see if it sticks.
Yeah, those are holding. Not me, because my Dogecoin wallet is the one thing that I didn't back up of my entire history for the past 10 years. Somehow it's the one thing I lost. Don't even make me think think about it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah,
maybe
I did usury just to get, I did usury just to get some Doges, just for, just for the meme, and I can't even make bank off of it. When I checked on Tuesday the value of my wallet, or not on Tuesday, on Friday or Saturday the value of my wallet, it was brutal. I mean, not as bad as a friend of ours who's currently struggling to sync up his wallet over for the last 10 years or something.
With 600,000 Doge sequestered inside of it. Yeah, best of luck to him.
USD and Doge.
Well, probably honestly,
600,000 Doge, 60,000 USD.
I think on Tuesday it was worth about $40,000. It's probably worth about 10,000 now,
by the time
but
it
still.
Sinks, I don't know. Yeah,
maybe it's for the best.
By the time the wallet sinks, but
Anyways, so I guess let's get in. I'm sure next month we'll have some questions about all that stuff. But let's dive in. Let's dive into to our queries here, and let's see what we can do. All right. Do you want to read number one?
Sure. Yeah. This Bad Bag Jack asks, which SJ episode is it that you guys go into Jose Delgado? I've wanted to give it a re-listen ever since I heard it. Around the first time I heard about Mae Brussel, I also found out about Delgado. What really blew me away was that Alan Moore had used Delgado as a model for the main villain of, in my opinion, his best work, Miracle Man. Truly the first, quote, deconstruction of the comic book out there, which I had read quite a few years earlier. Leans heavily into the inspirations of Superman's original authors and Nietzsche fanboys, Siegel and Schuster. So yeah, would definitely love to hear that Delgado bit again. Thanks. Well, I don't know if we can reproduce it fully again, but you can hear it on our Target Is Your Brain episode.
I want to say that was number 19.
Which number was that? Number 19. Wow, we've really done a lot.
I know. Yeah.
Feels like 19. Target Is Your Brain. Soviet perceptions of American mass media. Yes.
Yeah, there was a segment in the Target Is Your Brain documentary. So if anybody, I guess, that was one of our Aurora Frequency Patreon episodes. If you go check that out.
Fears of Psycho-Imperialism was the final subtitle that we gave it.
And so that they did a whole segment in this 1984 Soviet TV documentary about the two MK Ultra scientists in America, Dr. John Gittinger and Jose Delgado, and they give a good overview. Jose Delgado is probably most well known for implanting electrodes transmitters in
brains.
Particularly a bull. That was his big
yes, he was a brave matador. He was bragging because he achieved the mastery of a matador by electroshocking the bull into submission. I remember
we read some secondary literature on Delgado, I think, in that episode too.
Yes. Mm-hmm. He was controversial. It was weird how some of the articles that we read definitely sort of praised him and credited his research, or saw him as a sort of maverick genius in some way. But
there was maybe it was
extremely sadistic and bizarre.
Yeah, it was maybe a scientific
was to control humans' brains. Yeah,
the target quite literally was your brain with Jose Delgado.
Yeah, for sure. The target was the brain for sure.
And it's a very interesting.
I remember him saying some kind of remark to say that you can't invade my brain. Who cares? People are so precious about putting electrodes in your brain.
Great.
They just don't understand. But you have to listen to the episode to.
To
find the exact quote, which I'm certain that we read, but
it definitely has some chilling resonances with Elon Musk's Neuralink stuff today, and I think even those articles we found, maybe it was from Scientific American or something, it was in the last 5 years, and they were kind of trying to do a little bit of a liberal cleanup of this guy, even though I think it kind of varied. There were some articles that were more critical of him because, of course, he was from Spain, and I think he moved back to Spain at some point while Franco was still in power, and he had some kind of cozy relations with the fascist government there. So, it all kind of syncs up in a spooky way with him. But yeah, if you listen to that episode, we dive into Delgado a decent amount. Yeah.
This is interesting. Even his wife was delighted to see an alpha male gibbon collapse when the underlings pushed the control lever. Do you remember how we thought of Franco, says his wife. Imagine being able to turn off the Generalissimo. Delgado responds, but who could have put the electrodes into the dictator? With electromagnetic radiation, we could have controlled the dictator from a distance. We did some experiments at Yale where we influenced the brain from up to 30 meters away.
Okay. Targeted individual much?
Yeah,
okay.
Awesome.
I know that he has come up in the first time I ever heard his name was when I was researching targeted individual stuff years ago, and that he's a big boogeyman of that kind of milieu of people that are, really into that or feel like they're being targeted.
I'm sure, yeah.
Because, you could find his patents. Interesting, a lot of his academic research papers you can only find them in Spanish because he wrote them after he went back to Spain. I'm sure maybe they're translated somewhere, but it almost seems like it's a convenient roadblock to actually see more in detail what he was researching because it hasn't been publicly translated.
This might be the quote that we reference, or at least it's a similar sentiment. It's a 1972 article citing his views, which was presented at the MK Ultra hearings. I don't know if the article was 1972, but at the hearings 1972, this article was presented. We need a program of psychosurgery for political control of our society. The purpose is physical control of the mind. Everyone who deviates from the given norm can be surgically manipulated. The individual may think that the most important reality is his own existence, but this is only his personal point of view. This lacks historical perspective. Man does not have the right to develop his own mind. This kind of liberal orientation has great appeal. We must electrically control the brain. Someday, armies and generals will be controlled by electric stimulation of the brain. Awesome.
Who are the brain police indeed?
Yeah. Great.
Wow.
Cool. Yeah.
Who has the right to control their own mind? Not you, according to Jose
no one
Delgado.
does. That's, only your point of view that you have the right to control your own mind. It's simply a liberal orientation, and we must electrically control the brain.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, extremely cool.
Extremely cool.
Great. Yeah. Okay.
So,
Great. Yeah. Check out that episode if you want to hear more about that maniac, because we definitely talked about him at some length. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you know what? Let's move on to number 2. This is a pretty beefy question. But again, this is from Roy Walker. He asks, if you're still taking questions, yes we are, what are your thoughts on the Red Kahina Phil Greaves phenomenon on Twitter and Molly Klein's spooky family ties, e.g. her presidency of PKO TV and its partnership with CECHE, which I want to say was like CECHE. Do you remember what CECHE is?
I really am not all up on the Molly Klein info or the Paul Klein info. I mean, some of it I've read and it's interesting,
Yeah.
But I feel like it's more of a hook for people who were more deeply into the Red Kahina Phil Greaves orbit, which I really was. I saw Phil Greaves the other day. Someone screen capped him, talking about how germ theory is all fake, and he had some amazing quote. I want to see if I can find that honestly, but I don't know if that's really relevant.
You can. I mean, if you want, because I'm okay now. I'm getting caught up to speed. I got Paul Klein fan cam up on my browser here, and
determine what Cheche.
Yes, it is the it was a CIA front called the Center for Communications, Health, and the Environment that used health and environmental issues as a pretext for infiltration and regime change, according to the account at Paul Klein fan cam, and that was basically. He was referring to when Molly Klein, who's the real name of Red Kahina, very interesting, very notable, and kind of influential Twitter Marxist-Leninist, I guess would be, or Twitter communist, basically, going back to the early 2010s at least, and. So yeah, I'll back up in a second and explain to anybody maybe who's not familiar, because I've sort of I was MUFOs with both of these accounts at various points, and now I have been blocked by both. So I'm cut off from their universe, and I think I talked maybe in the last Q&A about Phil Greaves and how I got blocked for saying that the Syrian Social Nationalist Party. The SSNP was kind of sus, and that Partisan Girl, that influencer, was doing things with David Duke, and was doing really, I think the sort of red-brown alliance thing gets thrown about maybe a little bit too liberally, pun intended. But I think that in that case, there actually was a little bit of like, I don't know, like maybe like don't totally like co-sign Partisan Girl because she's like hanging out with David Duke and talking about, you know, Zog and like all these other things. Like maybe she does seem to be doing like an insight role or kind of entryism into like left spaces, and maybe you want to be like, you don't want to get shit coded by that, etc. And Phil Greaves, you know, is like, well, what you want, mate? Like, you know, and just like really like went after me. And then I think at one point Red Kahina like slid in and tried to like reason with me to like give up what I was saying. You just like stop, like you don't understand what you're doing, like you're giving aid to like the anti-Assad forces by like posting this. I mean, she was kind of trying to like position herself in between us, but then Phil Graves was like, sod off, mate, and then he blocked me. And but then like over the years, like there have been a few things with Red Kahina, and I mean, I can talk about why I got blocked from her. It had to do with Epstein and a personal connection she had. Anyways, let me just, okay. So the big thing that I think is referenced here in this question is Molly Klein's spooky family ties and her presidency of PKO TV. And PKO TV was the Paul Klein organization that was basically a production company for film and television, because her father, and that is basically her father was a very successful and influential media executive in New York in like the late 20th century. Now, this has kind of been known for years. Like I remember this kind of being brought up as early as like 2013 or 2014, because people would attack Red Kahina, who's known for her very kind of a passionate and colorful screeds against the sort of creeping fascist menace, and like, you know, needing to stand up for, you know, the sort of the axis of resistance, you know, like Iran, Hezbollah, Assad, Venezuela, etc. And so, you know, like I talked, I think the last Q&A about the evolution of my thinking around the Syrian war, mainly from following it on Twitter and seeing the takes that were coming out of this like Marxist Twitter at the time. And before it was really, there was a real like pressure to basically be on board with the kind of U.S. regime change narrative and agenda in Syria. And so like the Twitter Marxists like Phil Greaves and Red Kahina and her partner Cordelier, who is I think is actually still follows me, has not blocked me, but if anybody's curious, like I think they live together. They're like they're in a relationship. You know, they were the first people that were really kind of like calling out some of the propaganda and were calling bullshit on, you know, things that were coming out and various influencers. And I remember like I really did kind of like side with Red Kahina because she got into like this huge dust up with Molly Crabapple, and people, I don't know if people like really know Molly Crabapple, but she's incredibly sus, and she's one of these people, there's actually a number of them, but she was one of those prominent people that kind of became like a micro Twitter celebrity off of Occupy Wall Street. So she was like down in New York at Occupy Wall Street, and she would like, you know, she would like draw like paintings, like these kind of Harlequin kind of like stylish, like hipster Suicide Girl kind of like paintings of stuff. And then she started like writing she started kind of like working as like a journalist for like Vice and maybe a couple other like trendy application or, you know, trendy publications like that online. And then she was like very big in the kind of like sentimental propaganda campaign for Syria. Like she would always be like, you know, like I painted this portrait of like a 5-year-old boy like Ahmed who's like in a camp. I'm not saying, you know, people didn't suffer in this war or whatever, but it was always with this spin on it that like Assad came and like barrel bombed his village like 25 times in a row, and like they like announced on a loudspeaker like, we want to kill all you all because you're all scum, and like I'm a Nazi, like I want to kill you, blah. And like, wow, like it's like so deep. And you know, it was just
Red Kahina got very mad.
Yeah, Red Kahina really went off on her and was like, "You're a fucking CIA spook. Like, you're fucking, like, you're basically like Operation Mockingbird. Like, you're doing the work of the imperialists and NATO. Like, fuck you." And I remember like watching those fights. They were very kind of entertaining, and I was kind of happy that, because like there's other people that came out of Occupy, like Tim Pool is another good example of the same kind of thing. He was like a live streamer who like started out at Occupy, and now he's like this weird like centrist like crypto right wing like contrarian guy.
I don't know if you can really say he's like crypto right wing. Like,
no,
I don't know. Like, it's one of those people who like pretends to be like, you know, I'm a liberal and I can't, even I can't handle it. Like, you know, that's just, like grift. But like like it's an open secret. Like everyone knows. Like the only people who say he's a liberal are like extreme right wing people when they have to like name a liberal who they respect. Like, but even they really know that he's not. Like, it's just. Like, you know, it's all a performance.
It is. But, and so it was like nice to watch like people like Red Kahina like really go all out after that. And then, but then, you know, she's known for being like a bit of a bulldog. Like, you know, if she gets on somebody's case that's like, and so this is relevant to what we'll bring up momentarily with Paul Klein fan clam. But like, she very infamously, I think you could still find the video online, where she kind of like crashed Left Forum, you know, the sort of like leftist like gathering convention or whatever in New York in like 2014, where at the time, I mean, this is almost like pre like resurgence of DSA and shit like that. So it was a lot of like random like activisty and kind of like media celebrity leftist kind of types. Like it was, but I think Slavoj Žižek was there. And Slavoj Žižek did like a Q&A, and for some reason Red Kahina dressed up as like a in like this like strange like Mandarin costume is the best way I could describe it. You remember this video? Yeah, and like was like dressed up
as like Lao Tzu or something.
Yeah, it was, and she was there with a another account that was like very interesting and ended up being spooky of Taryn Fivek. Yes, and she was like very good friends with like Emma Quangle. Yes, I'm remembering now, was her name, and she was posting, she was another account I actually like really liked back in like 2014 that like kind of turned me more on to like the Marxist wing of things. And Emma Quangle. She had like worked in Iraq and had worked in like Palestine for like the UN, and was posted on a blog and like tweeted a lot about, you know, resistance against, you know, U.S. imperialism, and like really claimed like, I'm a communist, like fuck even like calling myself a socialist, like I'm a communist, and then like somebody doxed her and she like nuked her account, but then she like popped up again, and then she started like living with Molly Klein, and they were like best friends, but then they had a huge falling out. And then
I remember
Molly,
they were falling out, yes.
It was wild. And like this girl, Taryn Fivek, was like dating that Adam Johnson guy from like the Citations Needed podcast, who's been like a kind of, you know, lefty, like journalist, influencer guy at the same time. Like this all very incestuous kind of world. But then like they had a Taryn Fivek and like Molly Klein had a falling out, and then she started like for several years it was just all about how like Taryn Fivek was CIA and like infiltrated her life, and like she was an op and like you shouldn't trust her. But then like Taryn Fivek did join like I think the Workers' World Party, like a kind of sus like moribund Trotskyist party, and started doing a lot of like very like flashy kind of demonstrations. And I do think like there's something sus going on there, and some of the people she was like networking and cross promoting with. But then, you know, so like Molly Klein, it's like whenever you wanted to go and like get the hardest take on somebody that, you know, people thought were kind of sus, like you could count on Red Kahina to like bring the flame, and like basically, and she was pretty cordial, I think, with Phil Greaves. I think they had a falling out a couple years ago and like blocked each other. Like after Phil Greaves blocked me, they had their own kind of like fight and all that stuff. And then I think, okay, so then that kind of brings us up to like this year, where Red Key and I still, you know, followed each other and stuff. I didn't really interact with her anymore after a while. And I never like DM'd with Red Kahina because other people did. Like I remember like kind of when I got blocked by Phil Greaves, like other people were saying like, some more paranoid Marxist Twitter heads that if they, if they're listening, they know who they are, kind of explain to me, like, Red Kahina is fucking sus. Like, don't trust her. She's got, like, toxic behavior, and she basically, like, starts drama all the time, and, like, there's something, like, off that, like, you should, like, separate yourself from, because whatever. And so I kind of, like, heeded that advice. I think it was good advice. And then this year comes around, and, like, coronavirus hits, and then she was one of the first to, like, take a very hard stance against, like, this is a fucking op. Like, all of this is a fucking op. And even back in, like, I think, like, March and, like, April of 2020, she was saying this is a fucking op. Like, and I think she had some very hot takes. I think one of the ones that jumps out to me is posting, like, old sketchings of, like, masks that like African slaves would be forced to wear, in, like, in colonial America, right. And basically comparing it to, like, the mandate to wear a mask, like, in New York. Yeah, like, this is what they're doing to you.
I mean, I guess she is, like, how old is Red Kahina? She's like 50 or something, right?
Yeah, she's a Gen Xer. So that's definitely something that people are continuously like surprised that she's like older than that.
Yes.
But but okay, so there was that, and a lot of people were like fighting with her. But like that, I didn't fight with her over that, and that's not why I got blocked. Because the reason I got blocked is because it came to my attention at a certain point that she is quite close.
Recently that you got blocked, then.
Yes, it was like mid 2020.
Yeah.
And I'll explain why. Because Red Kahina is like very close friends with this writer guy who's on Twitter named John Stepling, and it's pretty much confirmed knowledge. This is not speculation at all or defamation, that John Stepling is like a playwright and like a blogger and a kind of like a left-wing dude and whatever, but in his past, like when he was, I believe, 30 years old, he was in a relationship with a 16-year-old girl and got her pregnant and like had a baby with her when she was 16. And and Red Kahina is somebody who, like, I feel like on the one hand she has never shied away from like calling the ruling class a bunch of like sadistic pedophiles in general or whatever, or like like she. As far as I knew, she never had any hesitation of like going there into like that kind of a Epstein, Larry King, DeTrue scandal like territory. But suddenly, when it came to like John Stepling, she didn't really. She started defending him, and like defending him in like very kind of weird and messed up ways. Like if people would post things about like Red Kahina, why are you friends with this fucking pedo? She would be like, why are you so obsessed with like underage sexuality and like the sexual agency of a 16-year-old? Why do you want to be their pimp? Like she would do stuff like that was just like, whoa, like what are you getting at here? And then she would post like other things about how like when she was a teenager growing up in like New York in like the 70s and the 80s that she had like relationships with older men.
Talking about age gap discourse and how it's like fascist or something,
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. She was
and
saying
like like
be concerned.
Like maybe a teenager. Why are you denying like a teenage girl the agency to have like an older, like more experienced lover? Like why do you think they like must be forced to like copulate with like selfish, like immature, like boys their own age and like stuff like that? Just like really like, whoa, okay, like wow, okay, you're really riding hard for this like theory. And and John Stepling, for his credit, I think literally did a it's not pedophilia, it's ephebophilia in his own defense. And John Stepling, like he kind of pisses me off, and he's a weirdo, and like I don't know, I read his blog, it's like he's like not that good of a writer, but I think he got like a Guggenheim fellowship or something like that to like go and like got to go to Poland to like teach theater and things like that. But he's just like a sus figure, and I don't know why like Red Kahina is like so attached and like loyal to him, but that kind of leads in. So people were maybe like wondering like what is up with this like curious approach to like sexuality that Red Kahina, this line that she has. And it had been known for years that she came from a relatively well-off background, and people had been able to figure out who her father was like years ago, and that was Paul Klein, who a lot of people love to like point out was the founder of, among many other things, Playboy TV, like one of the first like satellite pay-per-view porn channels. And so people would often like attack her by being like, oh, okay, like you're a communist, but like you're actually like a Playboy TV heiress and whatever. And, you know, she would say like, oh, you know, I didn't even inherit that much money, and like my dad died in like the 90s, and like, you know, fuck you, like that has no bearing on this. And to be clear, like just because your dad, I guess, founded Playboy TV doesn't mean you can't be a Marxist or like you can't be a socialist or a communist or whatever. Like I don't believe in like that like hard class determinism. Like Engel's dad owned a factory, you know what I mean? Like it definitely, like Castro's family wasn't like poor, you know what I mean? So it's
Right.
like, yeah, like class traders are a thing, but it's always like I just want to hear what it's kind of like Jim Morrison's dad starting the Vietnam War. Like I just want to hear you speak on this maybe a little bit, and like how does this affect you, and how you look at the world instead of just like burying it. But anyways, like out of nowhere early this year comes a very interesting anonymous account. And I, to be honest, like I really don't know like who's behind it, and it could be a number of people, because Red Kahina has like pissed off a lot of people over the years. But anyways, sorry. Before I get to Paul Klein fan cam, the reason I got blocked is because there was like another sketchy John Stepling thing that came out, and maybe somebody was talking about, because she had posted once, somebody had asked like, are there any nice billionaires that you've ever met, or are they all like pieces of shit? And she said something that was kind of very revealing. She said, you know, one time in the 80s I worked for Ronald Lauder, and he was a very gracious and nice man. And that jumped the fuck out at me, because if you remember, Khalid, when we were like prepping, when we met in New York in 2019, and we're prepping, doing this podcast, and we went to the Met,
Yes.
right at the beginning, and the Maximilian exhibition in big letters, it was like, this exhibit funded by the Ronald S. Lauder Foundation, and I remarked, oh, that's the guy who was ambassador to Austria in the 80s, who probably got Jeffrey Epstein his fake Austrian passport. And somebody turned around and was like, what? So that is literally that was literally something that I had stumbled upon and knew, is that Ronald Lauder, who's like, I think the president of the World Jewish Congress, and was an heir to the Estee Lauder fortunes, or maybe it was his brother was the president of the World Jewish Congress. Anyways, he was Ronald Reagan's ambassador. He actually, following in the footsteps of Helene von Daum, the personal secretary to SS, I believe it was SS Hauptschirmführer Otto von Bolschwing, who was in business with Gavin Newsom's dad in the Gettys in California. His secretary was the ambassador to Austria under Reagan, and then she was succeeded by Ronald Lauder. So I guess they're really playing both sides of the Germanic spectrum here. They got the wealthy like German Jews, and then they have like a Nazi woman. So they're covering all their bases, I suppose. But it was during this period where it was reported during the whole kind of Epstein thing that he managed to get a Saudi passport and an Austrian passport in the period of like 1986 and 87. So I think what happened was, I got blocked. I don't know what the original thing. The Red Kahina thing was, one most charming people I ever met was Michelle, parentheses, not yet Obama. Another, a former boss, Ronald Lauder. Let me walk alone through Cézanne. I guess Cézanne is, what was Cézanne? Is that like an art gallery or something? But then,
what did you spell?
and then somebody jumped in. Who follows me, said, what led you to work with him? What kind of work did you do? What was it like enjoying a private tour of Cézanne paintings courtesy of your evil boss, father's business partner, while you presumably seethed with hatred? That was Prior Gamesman said that. And then this is August 8th. This is actually right before we started Subliminal Jihad. But I just happened to write, Ron Lauder was Reagan's ambassador to Austria in 1986-87, during which time Epstein mysteriously acquired an Austrian passport. Probably just a coincidence, smiley face, and that is why Red Kahina blocked me.
Okay, did she ever say anything in response, or is she just blocked?
I don't believe so. No, she just blocked me. Like, she just blocked me, so that's well, fucking it. So yes. You know, that was just that was the end of the road. But getting back to, like, I think the heat was starting to get on Red Kahina this year, because this, like, mysterious account pops up, Paul Klein fan cam, and it just starts, like, basically dumping all of this research into the career and life and times of her father, Paul Klein, who it turns out wasn't just a guy who went and basically created Playboy TV, but he was like a softcore porn producer. I think he was an NBC executive. He produced a lot of TV movies, and like, the deeper you go, this is like a very complicated, like, rabbit hole, the Paul Klein thing. But the whole point of this account is basically that, like, Paul Klein had to have been CIA. And, like, not only that, but was, like, directly involved in the kind of social engineering culture manipulation that was happening within the TV industry in these corporations throughout the Cold War. And I think there's, like, quite a lot of compelling circumstantial evidence. Like, Paul Klein was also involved, I believe, with a State Department official named, I want to say, Mark Palmer. I think they were in business together, and that was the guy that swooped into Central and Eastern Europe during and after the collapse of communism, and bought up and privatized all of the television networks and, like, communications kind of apparatus, and basically like he was, you know, like, post-Soviet robber baron who, like, moved in to, like, seize all the, you know, entertainment complex that had existed in this country. So, you know, that's right off the bat. It's like, whoa, okay, like, so if your dad was all involved in this, like, we get it. Maybe you don't want to talk about him running Playboy, but there's so much here. And on top of that, Paul Klein is, like, he comes off in certain interviews and, you know, documents and stuff that he's, you know, talking about his work. He comes off as, like, an incredibly kind of cynical and sleazy and manipulative kind of person when it comes to producing content. And really, there's also quite a militaristic bent in a lot of his porn movies from the 80s. I'm looking at the cover here of Rambo Sex Platoon. So that's like Rambo, but RAMB -OOOHH exclamation point. And Oriental Jade, which is a kind of explore the sensual mysteries of the Orient with the all-American girls. Come, taste the forbidden desires of the exotic Far East. And Rambo is X-rated. The Force is in You. Stars up-and-coming Penthouse Pets. There's Up the Military, the comedy that takes the lid off the Pentagon, which I noticed. I haven't been able to follow up on this yet, but for some reason, one of the production companies involved was a Manson International presentation. And actually, the poster features, like, a kind of an animation of like a sexy woman in lingerie wearing, like, a Navy captain's hat, kind of pulling down her panties as a NASA space shuttle kind of flies towards her derriere. And a bunch of, like, horny kind of World War II soldiers, like, are, like, peeking out and, like, with their eyes agape. Okay. So that's up the military. And I guess Paul Klein Fancam said he has one of his good his or her good threads here. Many of the pornos that Paul Klein had a hand in producing, broadcasting, paralleled far-right Reaganite action cinema, which is no surprise. Klein's former porn producer, Harry Allen Towers, with whom he made Black Venus, was prolific in both genres. And I guess he also said Towers and his Zionist backer South Africa Productions were sickeningly fascist, bloody pornographic celebrations of racism and imperialism. One was described as, quote, maybe the worst movie ever made about Africa, a mechanical exercise in violence against Africans. Of course, Klein's own pornos with Towers, like, quote, Black Venus, were part of the same racist colonial oeuvre. And I guess so. Black Venus, explicit that Paul Klein commissioned at Playboy, explicitly tapped into the tradition of Western colonizers pornographically depicting their authority and property over the virgin soil of the imperial territory. Oh, okay. He asks, I wonder if Paul personally mailed a copy of Black Venus to his former investor, Petchek, the spooky banker who participated in the elimination of Patrice Lumumba. Oh, yeah. He also talked about, like, basically his philosophy for making television was to play to the lowest common denominator and, like, give the people, like, the cheapest kind of, like, low calorie content possible. There's a quote here from a magazine. In a 1967 article in Television Magazine on programs in this, quote, vast gray belt, the recently installed vice president, Paul Klein, observed that quality of audience was the most important criterion for evaluating such shows. Beyond the concrete of tenuous effect on programming vis-a-vis retention and development, we need to cast a more critical eye on the notion of quality itself, both as it was used by the industry in the 60s and 70s to refer to audiences and programming. Okay, anyways, that's actually not the hottest quote. But, you know, there's just like, there's a ton of shit there. And so it's like he worked a lot with like the Rand Corporation. I think he had an involvement with Sesame Street, which was, as I think we mentioned in like that Crypto Cuttlefish blog episode, like, yes, kids, Cookie Monster was a psyop. But I think, you know, he says like basically that, and I remember hearing about this like years ago, that there was a lot of like academic research and stuff and development that went into the creation of Sesame Street, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, there usually is with any kind of, like, children's programming. People will always, like, you know, try to bring in, like, specialists of some kind, especially with, you know, well-funded shows like Sesame Street that have a certain pedigree. People will always bring in, like, experts in early child education or something like that to try to match up their program with what the current line is on what children appreciate the most and can learn the best from.
Yeah, and also this is weird. There's also evidence they cooperated with the feds because they did get in trouble when there was like a crackdown on pornography in, I think, the 80s. I think they had like a TV network or something, or a satellite broadcasting thing in like Utah that got raided, I believe. But in this one tweet, it says DOJ's chief of child exploitation and obscenity unit, quote, said, yesterday's plea was significant because Paul L. Klein and Jeffrey Younger had agreed to debrief the government on their contacts with the producers and distributors of the movies they broadcast. They had a deal with like the Justice Department. They were really big in like apartheid South Africa, producing like plantation slave play, I guess. Really cool, like, movies about, romances
they do
between.
Like Adolphe Fudard type stuff, or like plays.
Actually, you know what? Wait, what was that? What kind of thing?
They did like plays based on apartheid in South Africa. Like that they produced like or about like slavery. Like what? Just to, like to clarify what the.
Yes, exactly. Actually, you know what? I'll just read this here because like a Paul Klein fan cam on December 31st published like a screen capped like timeline of like all of their evidence. So maybe I think we can read this and mull it over and then move on to the next one because you probably could go all day. But this is a good summation that. So 1961 and 1970, Paul Klein joins the research department NBC, headed by former OSS officer Hugh Bevel. He quickly rises up the ranks and is promoted to VP. Klein partly attributes his rise to being in favor with Robert Sarnoff, president of NBC. Sarnoff was the son of David the General Sarnoff, RCA president, a fascist spook who helped establish Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty. Another notable spook alum of the NBC research department is Klein's good friend Richard Lindheim, who later authored an obituary for Klein. Lindheim headed the Institute for Creative Technologies, a CIA, DARPA, and military collaboration to design military hardware, virtual reality applications for war, and more. 1970 to 76, Klein takes a sabbatical from NBC to start Computer Television Inc., A hotel pay TV firm. Donald Kirk, an alum of Naval Research Laboratories and a military intel contractor, develops the two-way CATV technology for Klein's company. Computer Television Inc.'s two principal investors were Time Life and Schroeder Capital Corp. Time Life invested in Klein's company under the direction of Barry Zorthian, a career Voice of America and USIA officer and CIA asset recently returned from his role as Chief of Psychological Operations in the war against Vietnam. That was a big one. Schroeder Capital Corp was a boutique venture capital firm and subsidiary of Schroeder, known for its ties to the CIA, Allen Dulles, and Nazi industrialists. Its president, Stephen Petchek, came from one of the wealthiest families in Czechoslovakia, whose interests were represented by John Foster Dulles for decades. As an aide to U.S. Ambassador William Burden in Belgium, Petchek has been involved in the plot to liquidate Patrice Lumumba. He joined Burden and CIA Station Chief Larry Devlin in a trip to the Congo 6 months prior to Lumumba's execution. I wonder if Herb Cohen, Frank Zappa's manager, was with him. Time buys out Klein's stake in Computer Television Inc. and then promptly sells CTI to Spectradyne, very Pinchonian. Spectradyne had been founded a few years earlier by former engineers of Collins Radio, a major Mark Collins Rector, just footnoting that, a major CIA contractor who were setting out to produce communications hardware for the military. Spectradyne was able to buy CTI thanks to a timely cash infusion from John Adell. Adell spent 11 years in the U.S. Air Force, including a stint doing, quote, semi-undercover work in Turkey, before going into venture capital, where he invested in multiple military electronics and signal communications companies. 1970-76, other activities. During his sabbatical from NBC, Klein also participates in multiple side projects linked to military and intelligence personnel. He helps Barry, quote, Barry Psyop Zorthian develop HBO. He gets brought in as a consultant to the CIA front, Ford Foundation, then headed by arch-spook and co-architect of the Vietnam War, McGeorge Bundy. He consults for the Children's Television Workshop, created by Bundy and Joan Gans Cooney. Cooney, a former USIA officer and another alum of the CIA's Congress for Cultural Freedom, describes Klein as her, quote, mentor in spirit. Klein also consults for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, headed by former Secretary of Army and Psy-War specialist Frank Pace Jr. Clay Felker brings Klein onto the editorial board of New York Magazine alongside Gloria Steinem, confirmed CIA agent. Felker, the founder of New York Magazine, had collaborated with Steinem on her CIA operations targeting the World Youth Festivals less than a decade prior. 1966 to 79, after selling his stake in Computer Television Inc., Klein returns to NBC and is soon promoted to executive VP and head of programs, becoming one of the highest-ranking officers in the entire organization. Declassified CIA documents from this period confirm that CIA officials were meeting with NBC executives to discuss ways of disseminating CIA propaganda through TV programming. In the face of mounting public criticism of the CIA in the aftermath of the Church Committee, Klein invites former DCI Richard Helms on to an NBC program to help clear the air. Helms headed the CIA when Schroeder Capital invested in Klein's CTI. In a later espionage trial involving a former CIA agent, it was revealed that Helms had used a Schroeder Trust account to give the agent $38,000 in, quote, back pay instead of a check from the Treasury. Following the Zionist invasion of Lebanon in 78, Klein airs the NBC show Holocaust, which was by design a Zionist propaganda effort. Klein brought in Zionist and close collaborator of the CIA, Mark Tannenbaum, to be script consultant for the show. Tannenbaum was Klein's preferred advisor for programs that pertained to the interests of Israel. Archival documents reveal a sophisticated and coordinated effort led by Tannenbaum's American Jewish Committee and NBC to promote and supplement the rollout of the show to serve Zionist interests. One of Klein's frequent collaborators during this period was the writer James Michener. Michener was a CIA asset who used his career as a writer as a cover for eliminating radicals who had infiltrated one of the CIA's Asian operations. When Klein was working with them, both Tannenbaum and Michener took a trip to Southeast Asia with the CIA cutout International Rescue Committee. The delegation included CIA asset Bayard Rustin and William Casey, the future director of CIA for Reagan. 1979-82, Klein leaves NBC and starts his own production company, PKO, Paul Klein Organization. PKO teams up with Osmond Communications for an exclusive 2-year partnership for a slate of productions budgeted to total at least $4.6 million. Osmond was headed by Robert F. Bennett, a CIA agent and associate of Richard Helms. prior to taking over Osman in 1978, he'd operated multiple CIA cutouts like the Mullen Company. Interesting. Mullen, huh? Oh, okay.
Well, it's a common name. It's a common name.
Okay. Confirmed during Watergate to be a CIA front, and the Summa Corporation. I actually looked into that. I wasn't able to confirm it. PKO's venture with Osman. So anyways, this wouldn't be the only instance of major PKO productions involving CIA financiers or partners going belly up. In 1982, a PKO production set to star Sophia Loren folds after the death of the Gladio banker Roberto Calvi and the ensuing scandal implicating the Gladio bank Banco Ambrosiano, which was financing PKO's production. So Gladio link. Then 82 to 84, the accumulation of unrealized productions proves to be no setback at all for Klein. Soon Hugh Hefner is on the phone, offering Klein the chance to lead Playboy's foray into cable television. Klein is brought in as corporate senior VP of Playboy Enterprises and named president of Playboy's pay cable network and Playboy Productions, and his wife Janet takes over Klein's responsibilities at PKO. 83, Christy Hefner announces the creation of Playboy Video Corp, a subsidiary of Playboy Enterprises. Klein is named president, thereby taking charge of all Playboy's operations in production, cable, home video, domestic and foreign pay syndication, commercial syndication, and theatrical distribution. This is the last slide here. 84 to 90, Klein leaves Playboy and in no time becomes president of High Life, like HILIFE, a newly formed adult pay TV service. High Life was a joint venture between Paul Klein and, my God, Domestidine. Domestidine was itself a joint venture of Microdyne and Domesticom. Microdyne was another military and intelligence contractor that produced classified signals and weapons technology. Microdyne had made the news a couple years prior for its participation in an FBI sting of a Cuban diplomat whom the U.S. accused of being an intelligence agent. Klein suddenly leaves High Life before the channel even gets off the ground. Wasting no time, he joins the Pleasure Channel as its new president. His stint at the Pleasure Channel proves short-lived, like the channel itself. Klein and his wife Janet then start Tuxedo and American Ecstasy, 3 X's, softcore and hardcore satellite pornography channels, respectively, which they operate under the umbrella of their company Home Dish Only Satellite Network. Along with Klein's former Playboy, Tuxedo, and American Ecstasy become the largest cable and satellite broadcasters of pornography in the country. After the Klein's hardcore pornography ends up in the hands of children, HDO executives, including Paul and wife Janet, are indicted on state and federal charges. This is interesting. Mario Cuomo refuses to extradite the Kleins, and eventually the Kleins take plea bargains in exchange for providing information to the feds on the producers and distributors they worked with. In one case, they are fined $5,000 and compelled to pay $75,000 each to 2 children's families, and another time fined $150K. HDO is reportedly driven out of business as satellite companies pull their service due to ongoing litigation. And finally, 90 to 96, Paul Klein cleans up. In typical Paul Klein fashion, the end of HDO only opens new doors for him and his family. In no time, Klein is back on his feet and soon joins Mark Palmer for the, quote, gold rush in the former communist bloc, where they install a media empire and privatize and loot the people's assets on a devastating scale. A giddy Klein remarks at the time, quote, what we're talking about is a virtually untapped market of 250 million people. Mark Palmer was a distinguished CIA asset who, on his own telling, spent his entire career devoted to the cause of anti-communism. With the State Department, he had been stationed in the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia, and prior to joining Klein, had just resigned as ambassador to Hungary in order to set up Central European Media Enterprises, CEME. And backed by his 8 guerrillas, parentheses, Ronald Lauder was the primary backer, but the guerrillas also included the Bronfmans of Seagram's, Peter Monk, and others. Palmer was instrumental in arranging, oh my God, okay, this is wild. Palmer was instrumental in arranging the delivery of Stinger missiles to the Mujahideen, was involved in the CIA's Poland operations with Solidarity, headed color revolution operations in Hungary, was one of the leads on Reagan's Project Truth, a far-reaching anti-communist Psy-war program that targeted the USSR, Nicaragua, Poland, Afghanistan, Southeast Asia, and more. He was the lead architect of NSD-77, which we talked about in the Victory episode, which, quote, laid out a comprehensive framework for psychological warfare, which also established the NED, for which Palmer was a co-founder. Okay, so that takes us right back to literally like the Peter Schweitzer gang of like in the Reagan White House and shit. And Paul Klein was like pretty much, he's like the fucking Forrest Gump. He's like the sleazy Forrest Gump of the Cold War. He literally pops up everywhere. And particularly this idea of kind of teaming up with all these military and intelligence contractors, and there seems to be like a psyop-y element to his media career. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'm just reading, while you've been talking, I've been reading a little bit of some of the films that were made as Paul Klein Productions or in partnership with Paul Klein, such as the sort of plantation genre of South African films, which is all kind of like very S&M themed sort of movies about these plantations, sometimes actually set, it seems, in the American South. He also apparently did a bunch of movies that were in partnership with Golan and Globus.
The Cobra producers.
Right, exactly. There's one that is mentioned in a Paul Klein fan cam tweet called Operation Thunderbolt, which was produced in Israel and celebrated the rescue of hijacked Jewish passengers held at Entebbe Airport the year before. More pertinently, Canon's American Ninja 4, The Annihilation, filmed in Lesotho, but was set in an unidentified state peopled mostly by black actors and extras speaking Xhosa, principally a South African tongue, features a plot concerning dastardly Arab terrorists and a Muslim dictator. Yes.
Yeah. Wow. And also, it's worth saying, lest anybody pull like the Jim Morrison and be like, you're extrapolating too much. I believe that Molly Klein, when she was young, became the president of PKO in like the mid to late 80s, kind of right around the same time that he was going to start getting into the Eastern European markets to snatch up all these assets and stuff like that. So like she was really a part of it. Was like a kind of a family business, and she was like intimately involved. So she's spoken so at length and like eloquently about like the ability of like media to psyop people that this all comes as very interesting.
Well, if you want to enjoy yourself for probably like a relatively long time, I would do a search on Twitter for those who aren't blocked, or I guess you can go incognito. Just do a search for @RedKahina and the word Buffy. Because she's obsessed with Buffy, and it's like she basically blames Buffy for all sorts of like social problems, like for instance, like in all sorts of cultural phenomena, like are all traced back to Buffy in like the Red Kahina paradigm. Like this is a great one. Greta, I assume Thunberg, is Buffy magical occult authority ordained as your leader by unseen powers? And there's a great reply, which is just someone saying like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And yes, that is what she means. She even uses Buffy to like defend, I guess, like her sort of take on like how people are too concerned about like the grooming of young girls or whatever, or sort of have too much sexual morality. She says, I still can't get over how erotophobic they are. What do they think happens to people from sex exactly? They think it's fine that adolescents get a tattoo for life but not have sex for a few hours? Why? They have seen and repressed images of Buffy kissing a cute guy and behind her back turning into a hideous reptilian vampire who will slice her into pieces, steal her soul, and damn her to an eternity of hellfire and sadistic feeding on nice people. That is lying there in the subconscious as a danger they run from sexual intimacy. It must be.
God, yeah.
They're
and in the
so
light of like
they're choosing not to grow up, not to mature, not to see experience because they are so terrified by life and the fact that growing up means making mistakes and getting hurt and rejected and failing and being heartbroken and killed by vampires. For one, like I feel like she's never actually seen Buffy because Buffy like is always like more powerful than like your average vampire, and like actually most of the vampires that Buffy dated, were good. Like Angel, he was a vampire with a soul. He was a good guy, and also he was much older than her. So Red Kahina should approve of that.
She really should. She really should. Yeah, maybe she should reboot it with John Stepling as showrunner.
Yeah, exactly. She should be allowed. It's amazing. Like Tarantino, Lynch, Coen Brothers, Zizek, Buffy, The Wire, Breaking Bad, all made Trump possible.
She really hates The Wire and also hates The Sopranos and a few others. Like that, they're like really, they're all like disgusting, like, fascist propaganda. I mean,
yeah,
you know.
I mean, but it's like just so weird how, like, you know, I feel like those are at least relatively, like, you know, The Wire and the Breaking Bad are relatively recent compared to Buffy, at least. Like, but it really has like a central place in like her analysis of like the cultural landscape of the United States. On May 11, 2020, she just tweeted, "It's Buffy and we are the vampires." For whatever reason.
Okay.
Like,
yeah, I don't know. There's a lot going on there. I feel like she was one of these like precocious Gen X kids. I've definitely met people like this before that like grew up in Manhattan in the 80s and 90s, and they all had like very precocious experiences with like partying, with drugs, with sex, with all these other things. Like, it was kind of a wild time. And so I think that there's still among a lot of maybe these like Gen X people that grew up in that kind of paradigm, like what's the big deal? Because it was like, I don't know, it was like fun and rock and roll and like cool back then, and everyone was just party like. There's a kind of I don't know, there's like a preciousness about when in fact like there's probably a lot of seedy shit going on in the 80s and like really fucked up shit, and I don't know if like just because she happens to interpret it in like a positive way from her own experience, thinking like why the hell, you know, shouldn't everybody else, like everyone's being too it's weird. Yes. It's like weird. There's a lot and I think there's a lot of like projection and like sublimation of like her dad's like entire career and probably like her participation in some of this type of content, which like you probably make a much stronger case against like pornography doing something deleterious to like the public imagination around sex than like Buffy or whatever. I'm not a fan of, but I don't like Buffy, but like I still like, come on, like, or you know, any of these other kind of things she rails on regularly.
Right, like, I don't know. I mean, Joss Whedon, like, he's like, sucks. His, like, dialogue is, like, extremely awful and, like, unbearable to listen to, like, a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, I feel like maybe Buffy was unique in being sort of soap opera-y in prime time, and that's what people sort of appreciated about it, like, whereas it wasn't really episodic, and it had this sort of evolving storyline, so that's maybe what, but, I just want to read one more, which is about, coronavirus that she tweeted on March 17th of 2020. Many people are attracted to this storyline pageant charade because of what's best in them for their longing for a good community and collective generous project. They want to be told to help their elderly neighbors, to get them groceries. They want to contribute to something. They crave this contrived and managed solidarity and collaboration toward a common goal, not for what's fake, but for the kernel of the real solidarity it exploits. Goebbels understood this well, but notice the U.S. leaders are wised up and made common enemy non-human, as in Buffy.
I was kind of like, that's the thing. I mean, Kahina has moment kind of like a little bit like she's almost like the Marxist, like Alex Jones. Like she has these kind of like lucid moments of clarity. Yeah. But then like if you know anything about kind of like her family background and like her capacity for kind of like going off the rails or like, you know, injecting Buffy into that is like, oh, okay, you know.
It's a weird I feel like swerve like into Buffy. I mean, I guess like I get what she's saying, where like. Not like a vampires can be exterminated en masse. So I see like the point. Like, you know, it's Buffy and we are the vampires. You know, like this whole like genocidal Mr. Global agenda. Like, I get it, but it's just like kind of comical that like the salience that is given to Buffy. Interestingly, like I read on Paul Klein Fancam recently. I wonder if it's still like up there, but that Paul Klein also had some connections with some dude. What was his name? It was B something, who was really like a big promoter of like sort of not only like right-wing publications, but also like anti-occult literature. Balsiger, like a Christian fascist spook. Okay. An anti-commerce operative who was linked to some of the CIA's most notorious Gladio-Contra groups like Alpha 66 and the World Anti-Communist League. PKO collaborated on multiple projects with him, and he also was like a big publisher, you know, of literature about the occult during the during the Satanic Panic, I guess, like, for law enforcement use.
Oh, yeah, kind of like that classic VHS video that you can, I think, find on Archive that's like here's, like, your law enforcement guide to, like, hunting satanic cults. Like, you know, they walk around the park, and there's, like, they're, like, in San Francisco, and there's, like, a Setian sigil, like, chalked on the ground or something. Like, now, you see, this is, like, from the Temple of Set, and, like, blah blah blah.
Right. Right. Like a guide like that will be like, if you see this spirally triangle, like, that means Peter, like, you know, Pedo or whatever, like, or something like that. You know, like, or like after 9/11, most people were hired, and it's like, if you see a Muslim wearing a headband, you know, that means that they're ready to be a martyr. Like, they must, like, be tackled. You know, like these goofy, like, fake experts. Yeah.
But you really see, like, like, they're so plugged into kind of like the kind of the psychological warfare, like, these, like, think tanks, and then, like, Gladio, and, like, you know.
Well, it's really, and even, like, it's very interesting, the whole thing with, like, you know, we're being programmed to accept, like, this sort of abstract genocide through, like, the idea of slaying vampires, when, like, meanwhile, like, PKO was, like, creating these, like, literally genocidal, like, action movies, like, targeting, like, specific, like, political causes and, like, people, like, in a very, like, precise way, like,
again, like, if you were so close to, like, this nexus of people that were doing shit like that, like, I feel like you have a certain kind of obligation to kind of.
She definitely has an obligation to address it. I mean, like, she certainly has never been above, like, Twitter drama before, you know. She'll, like, inveigh against Phil Greaves for, like, his Buffy-esque, like, fascization of, you know, a genocidal anti-communist line disguised as Marxism, but she won't address, like, Paul Klein fan cam. Like,
I don't think it has been addressed yet. I mean, I can't tell anymore because I'm blocked, but I think it's been pretty mum the entire time.
It has not. It has not, as far as I can see. Yes.
Okay. All right. I think we can.
Phil Greaves, for his part, I just wanted to say, last thing. I just want to say, for his part, he had, like, some amazing critique of germ theory recently.
I did hear that. Yeah.
Yes. He said. 800 years, and they're still pretending leprosy is a, quote, infectious disease caused by bacteria.
Okay, well, as opposed to what?
As opposed to, I don't know what it is. In his, he says, understanding the blanket scientific fraudulence of the late 19th century. I mean, that is kind of true. Which crowned germ theory, and with it, the power of the chemical pharmaceutical industry, is key to understanding what's happening today. So I guess Phil Greaves believes in, like, miasma theory. I don't know. I'd have to really read more Phil Greaves tweets to know. I don't follow him, although I don't believe that I'm blocked. Ironically, you're blocked by all these people, but I'm not.
I stormed, like, the Buffy the Vampire Castle. So
you did Buffy the Vampire Castle. Wow.
Which we'll get back to. We're not done with vampires.
We're not done with vampires.
Q&A, but
vampire-y Q&A.
All right, yes. So we're at we're like 1 hour now. So we spent, but you know, we had to do it. We had to break all that shit down.
All melted, and so is the chrome. Who are the brain police? What will you do when the label comes off and the plastic's all melted and the chrome is too soft?
So, okay, do you want to read number 3?
Yeah, how about 3? If you guys are open to it, could you talk more about your experience visiting the DPRK? Seems like a super fascinating trip and something I'm personally interested in doing one day. I'd love to hear how that came about and how it went. Yeah, I mean, sure. I would recommend going. I mean, I don't know, like, it's probably, like, if anything, become, like, a more accommodating and easy tourist experience since we went, I would think. Yeah. I mean, obviously not now, like, in COVID, but, like, in general. Yeah. I don't know, like, how much that like, COVID will just change the national, like, international landscape, like, you know, the global landscape in general, but, yeah, like, I would say that since we went, like, at the very, like, beginning of Kim Jong-un's tenure as... Yes.
Yeah, it was within a year of Kim Jong-il dying. I think we were actually planning the trip when Kim Jong-il died.
Yes,
and so sure. Yeah, so we just decided to, like, kind of go ahead with it anyways. And yeah, I mean, it is definitely up there. It was part of a larger trip that we did. I mean, still probably the most memorable and kind of impactful Definitely. And adventurous.
Hard to top that trip.
Yeah.
Something that I wish we had the opportunity to do again. I guess that was some time ago now. Like when I guess maybe we were younger and had more freedom. I mean, well, the world wasn't under like a planet lockdown, galactic reptilian vampire takeover. So,
no, exactly. It also was before. It was before the full renewal of like tensions with Russia. So it was like this weird period where I think it might have been actually on like the tail end of Medvedev, because wasn't he around until 2012?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because before we went, I was studying in Russia, and you guys, the other people who traveled with us, and you met up with me in Russia, in Moscow,
which is kind of why we went. I think it started as a kind of lark about if you were to get into this program in Russia, we should go meet you there. I had always like fantasized about doing the Trans-Siberian Railway since I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. It just seemed like super cool. And then it goes all the way to Beijing, through Mongolia, and once you're in Beijing, I mean, I had to confess, like, I saw some of, like, the Vice, like, documentaries, like, back in the day of, like, Shane Smith going to North Korea. And at that time, that seemed like a really kind of cool thing to try to do if you're, in the neighborhood, so to speak. And,
because we had talked about, we talked about doing the Trans-Siberian Railroad. And I think that, like, I remember clearly, like, we were sitting in, like, your apartment, and I was on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Like, looking at the Trans-Siberian Railroad map and noticed that it had a stop in Pyongyang. But we weren't ultimately able to do that because Americans couldn't take the train into Pyongyang. We had to take a plane on Air Koryo.
Their airline. A lot of other nationalities can basically take a train through Dandong across the I forget which river it is there, but basically you can go in and then you get a nice little train ride through the countryside of the DPRK. But Americans were considered probably still not quite trustworthy enough to just sort of ride through the open country. So you have to get flown right into the heart of Pyongyang. And I mean, we looked at, there's a number of agencies that like will do that can hook you up with, basically arranging these like state tours. So, I mean, I'm sure probably most people know this, but like you can't just go to North Korea, obviously. Right. You have to go on like a state guided tour. There's a lot of options. It does. I follow a few Instagram accounts of like, I think like Koryo Tours is one, and like Young Pioneer Tours. There's a few different ones, and they, you could it's like a whole package thing. It's like you could basically do kind of minimal one. I think we were like a little bit like capped in our resources at that point, so we opted to just do like basically like a 4-day trip inside the DPRK. Mm-hmm. And
we did like 3 or 4 days.
Like there's ones where you could
travel or something.
Lupine, Lupine Travel, exactly. Which is run out of the UK. So these are usually like British companies or something that do this.
Yeah, it's like a former club promoter. Transition to being like a North Korea tour facilitator.
Really, just an extreme tourism kind of thing. Like he would go to borderline war zones or places that were kind of locked down and remote, but North Korea was really kind of the like marquee, the top seller, if you will. But I mean, I think it was cool because we had been in Russia for a while, and then we were in Mongolia for a little while, and got further away from the West in a kind of gradual way, and also further deeper into the kind of the communist and post-communist, like post-Soviet world. Like, you notice that
we went to some really cool places across Russia. Like, we went to Omsk.
Yep.
Like, it was
Perm,
cool, like,
Perm
know,
was
like,
a really cool city in the middle of the country.
Like, we stopped at like some like kind of slightly out of the way or unusual places, which I think was a really good intuition. We didn't just go to hit the big cities, or we did a couple of out of the way ones. I think it was in Perm, or maybe it was in Omsk, like that we went on that like ferry.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it was very Chekhovian, like on the river, like out there, like, and I remember seeing like the gulls flying, and like, when you like hear the title of Chekhov's play, The Seagull, like if you're an American, you picture like these disgusting white seagulls that you see like here, but like in Russia, what the Chaika of the play really refers to is like these beautiful, majestic black gulls that like were flying all over like the river.
Really beautiful Perm, and kind of a funky city too. Like there's a lot of like intricate like graffiti and stuff like that, and like I remember the chicken nuggets at the McDonald's in Perm were, not to be basic, but they were like really excellent. McDonald's in Russia, I think this is like kind of an op probably,
the KFC,
but like
chicken nuggets I remember as well. I mean, once you got to a certain point, like they were, you like really couldn't depend on some of the fast food. But yeah, and also in Russia, something that was great was that there were like a lot of McDonald's like sort of knockoffs that were like kind of I remember we went to one. It was before when I was in Russia, when I was in Yaroslavl, which is an interesting city. We went to like Mac Duggins or something, like some kind of like it was like everyone got sick, like in my class who was there.
Nice.
It was
so like
but anyway, the DPRK.
When we got there, I felt like we were like kind of seasoned and a little ready to like get in there, and like it's like the kind of the final stage like of the of this trip.
We were excited. I remember you before, like you were like, "This is like Christmas morning. Like we're going to North Korea."
It was really exciting. We were definitely more excited than like scared or whatever. But it did have a thrill to it because
I wasn't afraid. Our friend told me some story like after we got there that like people, I don't know where he heard this, but he was like people in the hotel would get like kidnapped or held for ransom or something, or like slashed and then like put on life support, or like put in the hospital, and like they would and he was like, I didn't want to tell you that because like I didn't want you guys to get scared and not want to come, but I feel like that maybe, I don't know, like
that doesn't sound right.
I don't know, like I don't know where you heard that, but I just remember the kind of like, I mean, him believing that was true and then like not telling us, like kind of like annoying, but anyway, I definitely wasn't scared going. I did have, because I didn't have a visa back. Like, not that would have been a big deal, because I just could have, like, gone back to the United States maybe from the airport in China instead of, like, actually leaving. But I didn't have a Chinese visa to return, so I had to get one there, which actually was easier than it was in a lot of other countries, because I didn't have to go to, like, the embassy myself, because, like, according to our guides, like, in North Korea, your picture, your passport, like, that represents you, you are your ID, so they just took my passport, passport to North Korea.
No, they did. They took all of our I think they took all of our passports, and then they had like a sort of a temporary like visa form, so they wouldn't have to stamp our passport, because I guess it was like to avoid U.S. customs kind of like clocking you on the way back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
But they took when we got to the airport in Pyongyang, they very like in a friendly way confiscated our passports and our cell phones.
Yes.
You're not allowed to have an iPhone inside of North Korea. I don't know if it's still that way today, but you basically had to surrender that. You were, however, allowed to have cameras, like both video cameras and photo cameras, which I was able to make a lot of use of. I got some really fun footage and shots and stuff around the DPRK. But I mean, in terms of like the substance of the tour, I mean, how would you describe kind of the rhythm of it? And I don't know.
Oh, well, I just was gonna say that was the one time when I was like, I got a little bit freaked out was when, like, you know, they came back to me about my visa and they said, like, you know, we'll have it for you in like 14 days or something. Like, you know, they said something about 14 days and I was like, oh, I can't stay here for 14 days. Like, but they meant like I would have 14 days like in China before I had to return or something like that, you know.
Okay,
But for a second I just got. But other than that, like, it wasn't scary. Like, you know, I showed some of the video that you saw to like my brother, and he was like, I would not feel safe. Like, you know, we were at the DMZ and stuff like that. But it was not like, you know, I guess I don't know. Probably it's not a perception that people who listen to Islamul Jihad would have, that it would be like a frightening experience. But I guess it is a perception that some people have. But anyway, yeah, like I remember, well, two things like definitely struck me about it. Well, first of all, I remember like we went to the one hotel that they have in Pyongyang.
The Yonggakdo, right?
Yeah. And I don't really actually know, but like you know, their one hotel, which is very large, and it's kind of on a moat
in the middle of the river there.
Yeah, it's on an island, you know. You're not, you know, like, that's the thing. Like, you're monitored kind of the whole time. Like, within the hotel, you have freedom of movement, but in terms of leaving, you know, it's very controlled by your kind of minders. At least this is a state tour, which is what you can do in North Korea as a tourist. I remember, you know, instantly like going to like the gift shop and getting like you know, copies of, and they take like US dollars, like, or they took RMB too, I think, right?
But it's part of the idea behind running these tours, is the way to generate hard currency from tourists.
For sure. Right. Yeah, they had like pictures of like the North Korean currency, but we never got to actually like hold it.
It was illegal for us, I think, to possess North Korean currency, the won.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, yes. But yeah, I remember dropping some USD on like copies of Kim Jong-il's works, his philosophical and you know, literary critical works.
Same.
In the gift shop, like, right away. One thing that definitely stuck out to me was that underneath the hotel, there's like I guess like a weird basement that has like many aspects to it. Like, and only foreigners are allowed there. Like, our guides weren't allowed to go down there, and like apparently had never been there, which is interesting. You know, they live in that hotel, and their job is just to be guides and live there. But they had never actually gone to that basement, which when we went there was very odd. You know, there was like an abandoned Egyptian-themed like
karaoke room
or something. Yeah,
there was like a big karaoke room, and I do remember there was kind of like a champagne, or like a, you know, kind of like that, those kind of like flat and wide like champagne glasses, almost like a margarita glass. There was like a tower of margarita glasses that were filled with some kind of like strawberry daiquiri, and there was like mold floating in them.
There was mold like on the ceiling. There was mold all over the place, yeah. And there was also like an exercise room that was just full of like workout equipment and like an exercise bike. I think there's a picture of me like riding the exercise bike in that room.
Yeah, and you know, there was like,
I don't know if we were supposed to go into that part because that was like all dark.
It was all dark, but it wasn't locked off or anything. It was very
prominently there. Yeah, it was blocked off, and like as soon as you got down, like it was very prominently like accessible. Like that there was this extra part of this area, this basement.
Yeah, but there were a few amenities that were active down there. So I remember one night us getting like pretty drunk and going bowling in the bowling alley down there.
Yeah, there was a bowling alley down there. Yeah, there was a ping pong table, and there was a casino.
Yes, and there was a casino.
Chinese guys down there.
And I can report that I think they were playing, like, they're maybe playing baccarat and blackjack, and I can report that like it was kind of a high roller casino by like American standards, because I believe the minimum bet was like $35
or something.
It was 35. Yeah,
no,
I remember.
Did you win 80?
Yes,
yeah,
I played one hand of blackjack in the DPRK. I won, and then I like cashed out. And I bought some more like North Korean swag with like my $35, including a book that I think we should do maybe like a whole episode on, because recently I saw Paul Schrader like post on Facebook that Martin Scorsese had just given it to him, and that is the one book I purchased in the gift shop, which was Kim Jong-il's On the Art of the Cinema. which I believe he wrote in 19. Yeah. And I was actually reading with my friend the other night. I was reading some passages from it, and we both had to agree that like there's some real fire in that book. Like it's, of course, there's like it's just like it's a great book. Like I love
similar to the Juche idea and his other work on the art of opera. Yeah, there's definitely some, impressive phrases in there. You know, he really knows how to hit you with the, the rhetoric. He's got it down. I mean,
and I think something that was impressed upon us like throughout the tour, because we went to a number of locations. Basically, the concept is like in the morning you go down to like the big buffet area and have breakfast, and then you meet your guides on the bus. There's like columns of like tour buses just like lined up perfectly in the parking lot. And so like your bus rolls up, your 3 guides. I think we had, if I remember correctly, there was Miss Lee, Miss Kim, and Mr. O, who are our guides. Right. And Mr. O was like super based. If Mr. O, if you ever hear this, shouts out to you. He was our favorite. We'll talk about him in a second. But anyways, like we would take us around to different, monuments and historical sites and museums and things like that. But like one thing you definitely get impressed upon you as you go around this is like the real value that the Kims and I guess like the culture and the society in general really placed on like theater, opera, performance, spectacle, like art and things like that. And particularly like Kim Jong.
In the art of opera, Kim Jong-il talked a lot about the Sea of Blood, kind of like how Aristotle says Oedipus Rex is like the ideal tragedy. Sea of Blood was the ideal opera, which I really wish we were able to see. But we did see one show, which was like a children's show.
Yes.
Children's performance.
Because it was the one special thing about the week we were there is it was Children's Week in Pyongyang. Mm-hmm. And so everywhere around the city, and I think you can remember how delighted I was the whole time that like everywhere you go, there's like these like these field trip groups of like cute little like North Korean children in their classic like young pioneer outfits, like their blue shorts and their white shirts and their big red scarves. And they're all like, for them, the vibe I got was like, this is like going to Disneyland, basically. Mm-hmm. So like, I guess kids from all around the DPRK get like bussed in to Pyongyang for like a week. And then there's like all kinds of, I remember the first day there was like a huge, at the soccer stadium, there was like a huge children's rally and Kim Jong-un was there like presiding over it. He wasn't really saying much back then, but like he was there and like little girls were like reading poems to him and like this we saw it during the performance at the Children's Palace as well, which by the way was like I think we can agree extremely impressive.
Yes, it was very impressive, and like the thing that was great about it was that like it really was like just what you would kind of imagine. Like there was like a whole sequence. It was kind of like the kids had incredible like athletic and like acrobatic prowess and like in these doing this kind of narrative style dances. Mm-hmm. I feel like there was one where like they were like some of them were dressed up as like capitalist pigs that they attacked or something or were subverted. And there was one where a bunch of boys like came out like wearing like a sort of tank prop on their heads and like shot like a laser or like a rocket
I think there was there was a big projected there was a big projected screen in the back that would play like different graphics, and at one I think when the little tanky boys came out and were doing their thing, there was like the animated like ICBM like taking off like projected on the screen.
True. Yeah, there was definitely a backdrop of like their sort of rockets launching off into space as well.
Satellites.
At one point during one song, right.
And they had a kind of
the sort of orbiting the Earth.
Yeah, and the shows were also like the sort of punctuation points of the sort of maybe like 3 acts of the show were a sort of triplet of ballads to all of the Kims. So like
they rolled a new one about Kim Jong Un, which was really fun.
The finale. That was the finale.
That slapped. Kim Jong Un.
Yeah. No. Oh my God. It was so fun. And then like these choirs. It was like it was was like reaching kind of like, you know, Beach Boy, like Pet Sounds level, like ethereal,
yeah, they
like
had great
beauty.
harmonies.
Oh my God.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, there was one. Yeah, there were these Italian people with us on our tour who we thought like maybe were journalists or something. Like, you know, like
you did, and I remember you
yeah.
telling me like we think the Italians are spies at one point in the hotel room.
Well, not spies, but like, you know, like there was something sus about the Italians.
Yeah, they didn't.
Yeah,
we were in a group of like 10 people that all spoke English, but they were kind of the two that were a little bit kind of icy and like withdrawn and like kept to themselves, and it just seemed like, I don't know, like don't you I don't know what their deal was, but yeah.
But at one point during the show they were kind of invited up on stage, and like they were made to hula hoop, and like the kids like hula hooped like, you know, far better, and like did all these crazy tricks where like someone would throw hula hoops onto them and they would seamlessly like catch it with their bodies and continue hula hooping. And you know, the Italians had to like try to replicate like all these amazing things that they would do, where they like pick up hula hoops with their feet and like spin them onto their bodies and stuff like that. And they just like, you know, humiliated themselves completely, and everyone was like, ha ha ha, you know, like you foolish Westerners like trying to like replicate like this mastery that we have.
God.
But
amazing.
There's definitely like some desecration of the American and Japanese flags like worked in. They hate Japan, or well, you definitely get an anti-Japanese slant in the tour, like for good reason, you know, fair enough. Same thing with America, you know, fair enough. But like a lot of the tour is like focused on like the evils of the imperialists. And
the U.S. imperialists. And I believe at the Korean War Museum that we went to, which was like very kind of impressive, and we had this like great female military officer tour guide.
Yes.
And she like introduced the tour in front of this like gigantic mural of Kim Il Sung.
Right. Yeah.
I think as I'm trying to think if I can remember the quote.
People and like the Chinese soldiers were like behind him coming to help.
It was like this picture, like, this is the great leader. I'll try to direct quote this because I remember I filmed it. It was like,
this is the great leader President Kim Il-sung, the iron-willed and brilliant leader who defeated two imperialist powers in one generation. The picture represents the invincible little Korean people, strongly united around great leader President Kim Il-sung. So the great leader in this picture look always the front, from every place you stand. From everywhere, the great leader looks as if following you.
And she also said that there was a kind of optical effect painted into the painting where Kim Il-sung's at the center, and you said like the great thing in the picture, from everywhere you look, the great leader looks as if following you. So wherever you're like standing in perspective, like looking at this gigantic mural, Kim Il-sung is like making eye contact with you. It's pretty wild.
Yes.
They showed us the big panorama. They showed us a lot of captured American weapons. Like, kind of bragged a little bit about like.
We got to see the USS Pueblo.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we got to go on board and explore. You know.
They played some pretty great like DVDs when we went to different places that had a very like raw like kind of 1950s quality with it.
Like Tibia. Like that one.
You know, it's like, you know, like the great leader Kim Jong-il says as follows, like the U.S.
Yeah, exactly. There was like video installations. There was a great diorama of the Korean War in that museum as well.
A 360 panorama.
I remember like a lot of clips in the videos of like Lyndon Johnson looking like outraged, and like, you know, like quotes from him like it was a mistake to like you know, test the Korean people, like they are too brilliant in solidarity.
They're too strong. We went to like the Juche Friendship Foundation, where there was like little blocks from all around the world of like Juche appreciation societies that kind of sent.
I remember we asked, like, can you believe in Juche, like, if you're not Korean? Because it kind of seems like Juche is sort of, you know, just from, like, a glance, it would seem like Juche is all about the sort of, like, national character of you know, North
Chajusong,
Korea, you know, of Koreans. Yeah, exactly. So it's sort of about their sort of national identity, but I guess anyone can believe in Juche, was the answer that we got.
I mean, they invited, I believe they invited Eldridge Cleaver and his wife, and the Black Panthers went on a tour of North Korea in like 1970 or 71, and there was like, there was definitely some some good mutual appreciation where like the North Koreans maybe said something that like the Black Panther Party was sort of pursuing its own kind of unique policy of juche in America, you know, and things like that. You know, I think there's definitely, you know, I mean, yeah, it was like interesting. I mean, our guide, maybe we'll just talk real quick about our guide, Mr. O, because he's like the one North Korean that we really like interacted with the most on like a personal level. Because mainly, I guess he did live in that hotel, and every night there was a microbrewery kind of in the lobby that had like this kind of cool bar. It was like this kind of like groovy 80s kind of like style bar.
This is before I found Islam, so I was drinking as well.
You were.
We were all drinking this microbrewery. One night, like, I do remember that we, you know, before we go into talking about Mr. O.
You want to talk about
you know, and
our
we
Kiwi,
went to,
our
like,
Kiwi
you know,
friend?
Because we weren't supposed to go, like, you know, to, like, floors of the hotel outside our own, you know, somewhere off limits. So we did, like, you know, one night drink some of, like, the snake wine that they were selling, like, this really, like, you know, high volume wine with a snake in it. And we, like, roamed around, like, the different floors exploring the hotel. We didn't get Otto Warmbeard, obviously.
No.
You know, so...
But we weren't super. When that happened years later, I remember people asking me like, "Oh my God, like, don't you feel like so lucky, like, to make it out of there and not get like killed like Otto did?" And it's like, well, I had to tell. To this day, I have to tell Americans like we almost did what Otto Warmbier did. We just didn't take it to the very obviously very provocative level that he did, which like all of us were well aware that like if you stole something off the wall, like that, you know, like committing a crime there, and it not necessarily like committing a thought crime, but committing like something that would get you arrested in any country, like stealing something, that is a very bad idea. For whatever reason.
Right,
and
I mean,
think,
like, we weren't about to say, like, anything, you know, that would offend anyone either. We just had, like, you know, respect, I guess. But, you know, and we did feel that we probably were being monitored.
Yes, there were, like, I do remember we had these big old-fashioned radios in all of our hotel rooms that had, like, 30, they didn't work, and they had, like, 30 wires sticking out of them, and I was like, okay, like... You know, whatever.
We had heard from, like, other sources that there was, like, a room where they monitored us from, and that's kind of what we were trying to find.
It was the fifth floor. There was no fifth floor in the elevator, and so we assumed that was the surveillance floor, and that's actually, I think, the floor that Otto Warmbier, like, discovered and stole something from. So I think it was, like, extra provocative.
Really? I thought you just stole, like, a poster, which was weird to me because you can, like, buy a poster for just, you know, some USD.
They offer you every opportunity to buy, like, postcards, posters, banners, like, DVDs, music, books, like literally they want you to buy all that stuff, and it's like pretty affordable. So the idea that like this college
that's
kid,
what kind of led me to believe that there was something more to the Otto Warmbier story, you know,
I agree,
because especially like his background, etc. Like it definitely wasn't just that, like, you know, he acted out a little bit. I do, like, you know, that's kind of why I've always felt like there's a little, you know, it's not just, you know, this American tourist stepped slightly out of line and, like, he went to Camp Forever and died. But, yeah, I do remember that after that, Mr. O said to us, like, you know,
on the bus the next day,
go to microbrewery, like, you know, you have fun, like, but you, like, you know, you might find yourself, like, you know, if you
maybe you don't. He would always say maybe in a very interesting way. That was like one of his kind of go-to qualifier words when he wanted to tell you not to do something, but like wanted to not be like, you know, aggressive or whatever. Like, maybe you don't go wandering around the hotel late at night because maybe you get lost and it's dark and then you fall into the river and then nobody's able to help you, right? Didn't he say something like that? Like, maybe you'll stumble and fall in the river.
And nobody can help you.
And he said, you know, so guys, like, don't do that. I think he also said something like, you know, like, don't make me lose my face, you know, like that kind of thing, which people could go like, oh my God, North Korea is so evil, they're going to chop his face off. No, he meant like, don't make me look bad. Like, it's going to be, you know, I need to control you guys a little bit.
Yeah, he wanted to save face.
He wanted to save face and like, you know, exactly. Because he was very like cool cool with. He was kind. I mean, he compared to the other two guys, were very polite, but kind of like kept their distance. Like he was the one who would like kind of chop it up with us. And like I remember the first night when we were in that microbrewery, and we're like, "Yo, Mr. O, like, let's buy you a drink," and like he had us buy him like 4 drinks or something, and you know started talking. And then immediately he was like, "All right, like here's the deal. Like tell me." Like, what do Americans really think about DPRK? Like, don't beat around the bush. I want to know. I want to know the real truth. And we were, you know, the company, like, preps you to, like, don't talk about, like, politics or, like, anything like that. But here he was, like, kind of asking us, like, come on, like, tell me what Americans really think. And so we're like, well, it's probably okay to, like, talk if he's saying this shit. So I think I said something. I tried to be like, you know, kind of very like diplomatic and say, well, you know, Mr. O, I think like a lot of Americans, based on like what they see in the news, like they tend to think of like North Korea as like a very kind of aggressive, like a country with a very aggressive posture, and they're kind of like afraid of North Korea and like what you guys might do. And then I remember him going and kind of like a sort of semi-drunk, like passionate monologue about like how, you know, why the hell would like the U.S. empire be like afraid of us? Like we're little, and like, you know, like consider our perspective. I think he brought up Libya, which had just happened like, you know, the year prior. And he's like, look at Libya, like they made a deal to give up all their, you know, nuclear weapons program, and then like the U.S. goes in and like kills the leader and like destroys the country. So like, what are we supposed to think about that? Like, what, we're supposed to sign a deal with you and like not have, and meanwhile everybody that has nuclear weapons doesn't get invaded. So like, come on, you know, like we're not gonna. And I think he even said something like, you know, the idea that we would ever nuke South Korea is ridiculous. Like the fallout would just blow up north and like kill all of us too. So like, obviously we don't want that. We're not gonna like try to do it on a whim, but like, you know, it's tough streets out here and you got to defend yourself. And I remember being like, damn, like I can't really like disagree with any of that. Like that's pretty like reasonable. And I guess, you know, that was, can't remember. I think we talked all kinds of like other stuff. I mean, I think he said at one point, like I kind of like you guys.
I remember him saying that his pin of the Kim Jong Il and Kim Il Sung was his second heart. You know, that he would wear. He referred to it as his second heart. Yeah. Yeah,
that was the one kind of a souvenir you were not allowed to buy. I think you could buy knockoffs in Dandong across the border, but they would not sell you a heart pin for the two dear leaders, because that was kind of almost like sacrilegious for you to be wearing that. And so yeah, I mean, but then I mean, you know, there were some other like, you know, Westerners there. I remember one night we had a pretty interesting hot conversation with some like New Zealander guy. Maybe you remember that better than I do.
Real politique.
Yes, real politique.
Real politique. He, I guess, like, he was sus. He had, like, lived in West Africa previously, and he loved the U.S. It was funny because he was from New Zealand, but he loved the U.S. empire. He had this amazing quote that was like, "America is the only country in the world that can carry water to a fire, you know,
I remember that.
6,000 miles away." Like,
shut the fuck up. And like, he was talking about, that's real politique, mate. You know, like, just over and over again, he just kept talking about real politique.
Yes, he was all about realpolitik, and like he said that the ideological victory in the Vietnam War was won, so it was good, and the invasion of Libya was good. He also said there was no oil in Libya. And, you know,
very bizarre.
When the suggestion that like there was any kind of petropolitics like involved in Libya, he said that there was no oil in Libya.
I remember when I tried to push back on something he said. He's like, "Oh, I heard you talking about Lenin earlier, mate. I know what you're all about." Like, you know, something like that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there were some sus lords like kind of in the mix there. There were a lot of Chinese tourists too, who obviously we kind of didn't have any like interaction with, but I guess it was a big thing. Like Chinese tourists like going to the DPRK.
Yeah, it was mostly Chinese tourists because it was close, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
we were there.
Yeah, but all in all, like I think really fun and exciting experience, and like I think like, you know, it's been an interesting thing to refer back to over the years, like as more North Korean drama has kind of like popped off on and off, and also like the perception of it is like basically like 1984 like realized. You know, I think I have a more nuanced maybe perspective even when I was there of kind of like maybe that like, I mean, for one, everybody did seem, at least in the city, which would make sense because it's kind of the most elite, you know, place in the country. But like, people did seem to be kind of like, in a general sense, like pretty down with like the system that they had.
To be fair,
I mean, I don't know, like,
you know, we did not like one thing that is like, you know, not to say that like all the like things that are said about the PRK are true, like, you know, but I don't think that what we saw was like really enough to make like on like by itself like a true like a judgment, because honestly, like, we weren't like allowed to talk or interact with any North Koreans aside from our own guides. That was like one thing that really stood out. Like, I do remember, you know, we went to the subway.
Oh,
that
yeah,
was one
yeah.
thing that, you know, the metro, which was a very nice metro, you know, on par with some of the metros you'd see in Moscow.
Really nice,
although we were only allowed to go one stop.
Yeah.
So.
And
know,
I got on the wrong. I remember I got on the wrong train by accident, and I ended up alone on a car full of like of Koreans. And afterwards, like, the guides came over, were like, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, come on!" Like, and I sort of played. I think I kind of knew what I was doing, but like, I kind of wanted to do it. And it was like, but yeah, you're only allowed to ride one stop, and then you have to get off. And some people, you do notice, like, some older people would kind of like give you a little bit of a look. If, you know, depending on the generation, but the young kids, the young pioneers were always like waving at you and smiling and like laughing, and like they were just like joyous, and like, I mean, they're probably having a great time. It was Children's Week.
Right, it was just like, you know, the limits on like, you know, our freedom of like, you know, we weren't, not that this is like, you know, not their prerogative to like limit the movements that travelers have, especially from like countries that are like their avowed enemies, but like, you know, we didn't really get to interact with anybody other than like, I remember after the metro, you know, you kind of tried to like linger around us at the bus a little bit, like, because there were people coming out of the subway, you know, we were like amidst like people for the first time, and they were like, you know, our guys were like, "Come on, like, we gotta go, it's raining," and it was not remotely raining, like, it was not raining. But you know, I think you're selling our other guides a little bit short, because like, you know, our other guys, Miss Lee and Miss Kim, definitely one of them was Miss Kim. They performed like, you know, My Heart Will Go On for us. They did a karaoke performance of My Heart Will Go On.
It was really beautiful.
Yes, and they also told us that, you know, like, if the United States tried anything, like, you know, if the United States acted aggressively, they were ready to everything.
They were ready to everything, exactly.
The situation it became tense again nowadays. The situation between North and South, it is very bad since email communism took power. So we just said we just told them that if they don't apologize to us, we are ready to everything. We are ready to everything.
They were ready to everything.
Told us, like, very, like, almost as soon as we were there, like, one of the first messages that we received was that they were ready to everything.
Which, fair enough. I mean, I guess they've been ready to everything, and they, you know, I mean, I have to hand it to my our boy Kim Jong-un. Like, we weren't sure really what to make of him, and it seemed like our guides actually didn't. I remember right after we visited the monument, the bronze statues, where they, you know, very gently encourage you. They just erected Kim Jong-il, and, you know, they very gently kind of encourage you to buy some flowers from a little flower stand there, so you can go up and lay flowers at the feet and then bow. So you know, we're like, all right, we're gonna do this. And I remember, like, when we were walking away after, Mr. O was, what do you think about Commander Kim Jong-un? And again, it's like, okay, loaded question, but like, I'm like, well, you know, like, I think it's like an exciting opportunity. Like, he's young, you know, he's like the first millennial world leader in a way, and I decided to, like, you know, maybe test the waters a little bit, and I said, you know, I think it's really interesting that he went to boarding school in Switzerland, like, with people from a bunch of different countries. So, like, I think he might have a little bit of, like, an international perspective that could be, you know, helpful to, like, you know, promoting peace. And he was like, wait, what? And I'm like, oh yeah. He's like, wait, he went to boarding school in Switzerland? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, how do you know that? And I'm like, oh, like I read about it, like he was it's like he hadn't like heard of that before. So that was kind of an interesting thing of like maybe they hadn't really kind of like they were still kind of constructing like how are we really gonna like kind of build the image of Kim Jong-un as kind of in like the right way. We don't want to like throw that information out there because that sounds kind of like that's not a real we're talking about the grandson of Kim Il Sung here, so like we want to probably stress his like roots with like in Korea and like all these other things. So I think that was interesting that there was kind of like this information. There was this like it's the only country I've ever been to that didn't have advertisements. It didn't have billboards or anything. It had like political banners around, but like there was no Coca-Cola and there was no. I think you maybe could get Marlboro cigarettes because Mr. O smoked like 3 packs of Marlboro Reds a day. But they had their own actually like North Korean cigarettes, which I bought a few cartons of. And, that was like, that was really fascinating about it was like this one place where like neoliberalism and like U.S. imperialism was like not allowed and was like kept out of and like had its own things, completely own things kind of going on. And I have to say,
I saw like one Fanta like the whole time that we were there. I think that there was one Fanta that I came across, but maybe I don't know.
That's sus. That was a Nazi beverage. That was a Nazi beverage.
No.
Yeah, no. Fanta. Yeah, it was. Yeah. But for the most part, like no. And also, I mean, last but not least, like we were taken to the childhood home of Kim Il Sung, and we were shown like the childhood well. And I guess there's a tradition there in the DPRK where you can take a drink from the well of Kim Il Sung, and it's supposed to give you like good luck, and things like that. And so some of our people didn't really want to do it because like, just like it's just like water in a foreign country. But you and I felt inspired that we should take that. And as soon as we got back to Shenyang, I think the next day we both got like extremely bad dysentery.
I was totally waylaid. Like, I wouldn't say it was definitely dysentery. Like, like in
I think it was.
Sense.
It was something. It was something on that level. It was messed up. I started hallucinating. I had like weird dreams. Yeah, no, I had a dream that like our guides came and picked us up in Shenyang. We're like, come on, guys, we got to see more monuments. And I was like, but wait, like we left North Korea. Like, no, we're not done yet. You got to come on. And then it was just like we were on like a monument tour forever, and like you couldn't get off the bus. Like, it was like I had some real like weird like trippy things, and we were like locked in our hotel for like 2 days.
Like, I feel like I saw protists in that water like as I was drinking it. But and like it was awful. Like I was like screaming. I remember like one of my clearest memories is like you smoking that cigarette like while I was like dying, and I couldn't like handle it because like I just didn't want to like inhale like cigarette smoke at that time because I was like on the cusp of like death. And I was just like, well, at least the window's open. And then like a wasp, like a wasp, I guess, like flew. And you're like, a wasp, like slammed the window shut. And I was like, oh my god, like I was losing it. Like,
good times.
It was not good times at all. It was bad.
That was rough. That was rough to come back from. I think we had to take some antibiotics after that.
Our friends came through and got us some antibiotics, but I was really hurting for like some saltines. At the time I was definitely wanting to smoke some weed too. Like, I was definitely a little homesick at that moment. Like, give me some saltines.
They almost got us, but we escaped. No, just kidding.
Exactly.
Not their fault. Should have not drank the water. It's not for us.
Probably shouldn't have done that. And I haven't become president as was predicted by the water. Although that might,
Well, you laid flowers at the wreath of the statue, so you'll never be president.
Yeah, exactly. I think that probably drinking the water from that well and whatever boons that might have are probably countered out by having done that especially in terms of being the U.S. president.
Okay.
I believe I'm eligible to be president of it all. But,
of course,
Anyway,
okay, so that's a good, I think, summary of our experience in DPRK.
I've given it a long time. For Kim Jong-il and like Kim Il-sung songs.
They
then
really
they're
did.
like, here's a new Kim Jong-un song. And like,
it was absolutely the best thing.
It was really
We'll try to make a good time here. This is like kind of tangentially still on the Korean Peninsula, but number 4 from Badback Jack wrote, earlier in the grotto, Dr. Poshlos mentioned having a friend well-versed in South Korea affairs. I posted a comment earlier relating to the wild story about 2 generations of presidents mixed up with 2 generations of cult leaders, culminating in a national scandal with hundreds of thousands, if not more, people in the streets protesting. And then there's the seawall disaster, which left hundreds of school kids drowned on the anniversary of the cult founder's death, and a lot of sticky questions. I would love to hear yours and your friend's opinion on this. Thanks. Okay. Have you heard? Are you familiar with the story about President Park?
Yes. Yes, I remember. Well, there was the hubbub in 2016, and also, you know, it goes back like even further because like Park, who was president in 2016, who then went to prison for like 20 years on like corruption charges.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the substance of which was her involvement with basically like a sort of Rasputin type figure, who was like a what was her name? It was Choi something.
Choi Soon-sil.
Yeah, she, I guess, was a daughter of someone who had been like sort of a Korean Rasputin, who had like a lot of outsized influence on the political machine.
And President Park's father, General Park, who like ran the country, I believe in the 70s, right, under a military dictatorship.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, he was assassinated by the leader of the sort of the armed forces in Korea, and I think one of the reasons why, according to the assassin, who was Kim Jae-gu, the director of the KCIA, and his security chief, one of the reasons was the outsized influence that. The father of Choi Sun-sil, who, what was his name? I guess it was
the original leader, Choi Tae-min. Yeah. And I just
interesting. And there's also been some cult stuff around COVID. Like apparently, like a huge proportion of their COVID cases are attributed to like members of cults. There's a huge phenomenon in South Korea where like cults are a gigantic part of society and like a huge influence on politics.
Well, I mean, and also maybe the biggest cult culture of them all, K-pop, I think definitely feeds into that to a certain degree.
Course,
I mean, the idea of stands and like
the ultimate cult.
And you know, I think there's been all kinds of speculation on K-pop because K-pop's like a very like top-down controlled version of a music industry, which drew a lot of inspiration from the U.S. music industry, but it's like heavily managed and like there's a lot of corruption, kind of abuse and control of like talent and like all kinds of shady things going on. But it's amazing how they built this like machine that is really like, you know, taken a pretty high position in terms of like world music.
Yes, that's true. I think it's also interesting to consider, you know, like whether, how much this is like a unique, I mean, definitely in certain ways, like all things are, you know, within a given culture have like certain idiosyncrasies and distinct characteristics, but I wonder like how much like, you know, perhaps like there is an influence of like these sort of religious movements, obviously not in the same way, but I think that we kind of discussed on the show how like, you know, even though it's been more visible, and especially in recent years in South Korea, maybe this aspect of these sort of mystical organizations having like a profound political influence, maybe you know, some ascribing that solely to this sort of other, you know, is an instance of that projection that we've often talked about.
For sure. I will say that well. Yeah, I will say that like when this President Park kind of shaman scandal kind of broke out a few years ago, I did appreciate it in the sense of, if anybody wants to say that there's absolutely no foundation to the claim that there's like a connection between like secret societies and cults and like esoteric kind of orders and like the highest echelons of political power, like this is a perfect case study of how it is not controversial, the facts of this case, in terms of the fact that she, you know, had this deep relationship and all this financial chicanery going on and all these bizarre beliefs. So it's like, you know, for anybody that thinks, oh, like all those hooded guys at Bohemian Grove, like they're just doing a little summer camp ritual, it's like not. Well, I mean, here's one example where somebody took it very seriously, and her father, a general, a right-wing military dictator and U.S. puppet, it should be added, also took it quite seriously. And then, you know, you could throw in like the Moonies and that whole thing, like that was also one that was like very politically plugged in both South Korea and the U.S. You know, there's that Koreagate scandal in the 70s where they're like bribing members of Congress. So like, I think there is much more entanglement. There is an entanglement going on that we talk about all the time in a variety of like different countries and historical periods, but it's something that is kind of like, it's more of a constant than kind of the mainstream is willing to admit. And I think it didn't get a lot of coverage in America as like they definitely I definitely saw stuff on like CNN that was like they're marching in the streets to like throw out this president, but like they never mentioned like because she's in like a weird cult and like et cetera, like they always left that part out.
Yeah, that was like a sort of an aspect of the corruption angle, like, you know, what they materially did, like in many ways, like the crimes or like influence peddling, like the way that this cult would extort favors and or, you know, this individual, the shaman, like first the father and then the daughter, across these two presidents, you know, over these, like, it's, you know, crazy, the tumultuous history of this political dynasty. You know, the mother of the former President Park was, who was, you know, removed from office in 2016. She was also assassinated in a failed assassination attempt, or killed in a failed assassination attempt. I guess she wasn't assassinated if it, you know, was
failed
on her husband's life. But anyway, yeah, she was killed in an assassination attempt on her husband, and there was a later successful one by his own security chief in 1979, as we mentioned. Yeah, and then she went on to become the president. You know, very tumultuous political history of that family, which is all very much embroiled with the generations of this cult. But
I wonder. Just to throw in here, just because we just talked about the DPRK, I do wonder to what extent the like high activity of spiritualist cults and also like mass entertainment kind of cults like K-pop are created as a kind of an answer to the, for lack of a better term, cult of personality around the Kim family and the DPRK. Like building a counter mechanism to, like, they need something to basically create a sense of social cohesion and shared purpose, et cetera, and so it's like they need something to fill that void, lest South Korea be kind of like atomized and more, you know, spun off in different kind of tendencies and directions. Like you need something highly symbolic and almost like para-religious for the people to focus their energies around.
Well, I think that definitely, like, there's a dialectic between, like, the two things that you mentioned, and, like, I think that maybe, if we mentioned Otto Warmbier, who had, like, an evangelical background. I think that partially, like, perhaps, you know, or even a missionary background, if I recall correctly, I think that maybe part of the reason for his treatment might have had to do with him, like, mentioning certain things, and I think that they're, you know, maybe because of the incredible power and, like, the political control that's sometimes exercised by these religious organizations in South Korea, that might be part of the reason why North Korea is particularly vigilant about that. About like things like religious movements or evangelical Christianity or anything like that.
Yeah, it takes on a different light when you look at some of the stuff's going on in the Republic of Korea, you know?
And yeah, and also I think North Korea, they're also very mindful of, the sort of to differentiate their sort of popular or mass culture from the South Korean popular culture. It's not good to sound like a South Korean pop singer to be like a North Korean singer. You want to have like a more classical voice suited for a performance of Sea of Blood or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want to be like one of the members of Blackpink. But I think that there's definitely like some counter definition or some oppositional self-definition going on. But I think that I mean these like they're both ultimately like Koreans. I mean you can say that about a lot of different cultures, not to like declaim about something that I really like I'm not an expert in by any means, but one like their separation isn't really historically speaking that old, and so one can assume that like certain cultural trends insofar as most of them have like roots, you can see like that they would be observable like on both sides of the border. There wouldn't be such a dramatic transformation, or at least there would be sort of a sensitivity to them, and that they would have a complex relationship like between them. So for sure. How odd that like South Korea, like in South Korea, cults and like religious movements have this incredible like outsized influence like in politics, and this very prominent role in the sort of political structure, and have been been embroiled in these very highly publicized trials and mass protests and the removal of this president, and even these to an extent these assassinations, to then that obviously has to be seen in the broader context of like South Korea's geopolitical situation, both like vis-a-vis North Korea and vis-a-vis like its position as like a U.S. ally, etc.
Yeah, for sure.
That would be my thought.
I just want to mention real quick, because they brought up here the Sewol, I hope I'm saying that right, SEWOL disaster, and they linked to a Korean message board, and I guess like what they're referring to is there has been much speculation about the missing 7 hours, where President Park's whereabouts were completely unknown for 7 hours in 2014 during the Sewol ferry disaster. Rumors are now running rampant that Park Geun-hye was attending a memorial shamanistic ritual for Choi Tae-min, who passed away 20 years ago on the day of the ferry disaster. The more lurid version of the rumor says that Park's government actually sank the seawall to offer human sacrifice for the dead cult leader. As ridiculous,
wow.
So that's the mass ritual, basically. Speculation was running wild, I guess, in Korea.
Right. So that's kind of like the 9/11 as mass ritual version of the more conventional story of like the 9/11 Commission report version, which is that it was just gross incompetence. They were implicated in. So I guess there's the sort of same spectrum of belief about the ferry in terms of like, was it just gross incompetence? Was the government not responsible at all, and it was like due to a freak accident or something, or the incompetence of the captain? How much is the government culpable? Like, did they practically do it, or did they actually do it as a sacrifice?
It's very interesting. I would like to maybe circle back to like the particular kind of like what were the particular beliefs of that cult. One day maybe we could dive into that. Maybe I could talk to the person I know who's like very, very knowledgeable about kind of Korean history and politics, and maybe get their 2 cents on like what's the most important thing to focus on. So that's that.
I think we can definitely. I think this definitely might be worth like an episode down the line. There's definitely some interesting stuff to go into at greater length. But we'll just say bookmark that, and we will definitely devote some time to it. But
no, I think it's a very straight path. Like feet together. Film the great event. Oh, I will.
Oh, God.
You truly can never be president. You're never going to be president.
I will never ever be president now.
You will never hold elected office.
Of any kind. I will never even be a meager state senator.
And then make a bow. Then you can take a picture. Huh? We are very highly appreciated for your mind. country, national flowers of our country.
When do they bloom?
Maybe I don't know exactly. I love flowers. I love trees, but I'm not botanist. The leader Kim Jong-il passed away. So, on the occasion of the centenary birthday this year, April 15th, we revealed these two leaders' bronze statues.
Instead of one.
What's the symbol in the middle? You got the hammer, the sickle, and the one.
Oh yeah, that's the Hanti mark, huh?
Yeah,
It's
like a writing brush. Like
writing
a
brush.
intellectual.
So big. Oh yeah, how do you know? You know?
I read about it.
Okay. Yeah, we can move on to 5 from Ossivicans. You want to read that?
Sure, yeah. I'm not sure if this has been covered, says Ossivicans, but what do you think about True Detective Season 1 and how it's arguably the most accurate representation of ritual abuse and cover-ups in mainstream media? Well, I wonder, like, I guess in a way, like, it's, you know, full-length narrative, like, serialized TV, which I guess people feel is sort of a more powerful medium, like, kind of where, you know, you can tell a story over a longer period of time, and the True Detective Season 1 was, like, narratively well-wrought in a way, in that, you know, the chronological sort of jumping around and the performances by the lead actors were very good. I mean, really, though, like, I mean, I don't know, maybe it is the best, or the, I don't know, most accurate representation. I'm not sure, but there are obviously many representations of things like this. I think this is, like, kind of part and parcel of, like, the discussion of them, is that they're often, like, represented in the media in some form.
I mean, you got Eyes Wide Shut. I want to say there was a movie with, like, Martin Sheen from 1989. I want to say it was called, like, The Believers, but that was about, like, a elite satanic cult.
Yeah, The Believers kind of was about, it was more Santeria.
Okay.
With that movie, but it was a similar thing where they do these sacrifices for power, and they were elite figures or powerful people. I mean, Rosemary's Baby, like, really kind of had the same sort of thing. I don't know if that had the same sort of political angle so much, like, but I think that there was kind of that thing where, you know, with a doctor, you can't trust a doctor, you know, he's on it. There's still the sort of sense that, like, these authority figures are involved, like, you know, and this is sort of this, definitely like a McMartin type of vibe you could see in Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, although I guess not the abuse of children per se, but there definitely are, you know, depictions of that and the sacrifice of babies and things like that to Satan. You know, that's kind of an old idea. But, you know,
I mean, I think it's interesting to consider True Detective because, like, I think I was a pretty big fan of it. I was pretty kind of excited by it when it came out in 2014, and like, I don't know, I remember kind of tracking down the script and also, like, the sort of like the pitch Bible for it that Nick Pizzolatto wrote and kind of took out to, like, sell it to people. And it was like a pretty tight script, at least the first episode was, and, like, it was painting in these, like, really dark colors, and it touched on certain things that felt like they hadn't really been touched on in a deeper way in a while. And actually, one thing that's interesting about Nick Pizzolatto, and this actually popped up in, like, season 3 of True Detective, but he mentioned it, like, on Twitter when season 1 came out. I remember he did something, somebody asked him about, like, is this based on, like, something real? And he tweeted out something like, look up, like, Omaha child sex ring 1980s or something, like, Google that. Like, he basically told him to Google the Franklin scandal. And then actually there was like an explicit reference in season 3 to the Larry King scandal, because I think it was the Mahershala Ali's wife, that character was, like, doing research on the internet, and she came across, like, all these articles about, like, Larry King and, like, Omaha, like, elite sex abuse stuff, and, like, it clicks through the homosexual prostitution ring ensnares Bush, Reagan, White House, like that old article from, like, the Washington Times, like, all those kind of iconic, like, images of, you know, Franklin scandal that you see everywhere, were, like, pretty prominently flashed on the screen. Of course, the thing is, like, season 3 actually did a kind of like a swerve, and not to spoil it or whatever, but it ended up kind of like not being like an elite satanic cult. The first one definitely rides with it kind of to the end. There's like that videotape that's allegedly of like elites like sacrificing a child. They never show like what's on it, but it's kind of like the reactions of the people that are shown it. It's like it must be horrible and all that stuff. I think we mentioned like before we started recording, like I think we both were like a little bit let down by like the ending of it. I feel like it kind of like didn't fully stick the landing.
It was just like we got our man, I mean, in a way that like kind of makes sense where like yeah, it's sort of like a lot of the time like in some way maybe realistic that like when people go after these things like they don't you
don't get everybody
actually achieve their objective, but they didn't really properly try. Like they got one guy and then they kind of like gave up, which was kind of like a disappointing aspect, and one was kind of maybe hoping for more, and like it really ended on kind of like a saccharine note, like I guess I like the universal battle between light and dark, if people can get on board with that. It's kind of like the fundamental theme in a lot of fiction and a lot of like even like philosophy and human reflection on life, but like it's kind of trite like the way that it ended.
It felt like a little a bit cop-outy, like no pun intended, and I think that so it's like I know that he's aware of things like the Franklin scandal and things of this like nature because he's like mentioned it before from the very beginning, like when he wrote this show. And if it's almost like if you map the real Franklin scandal onto True Detective season 1, it's like it ends when like they confront and like kill Rusty Nelson, and they're like, all right, we're done. You know what I mean? It's like that kind of. It's like they didn't even get Larry King. They just got like one of the henchmen basically for this thing.
Right.
And so it's like but then like the ending doesn't feel as unresolved as it actually is, and it's kind of just more about their personal character arcs and like coming to terms with like the world or whatever.
Mostly like the backdrop for like a detective story. It was interesting because like one of the things that I actually am a really big fan of Robert W. Chambers' collection, The King in Yellow, and the story Repair Reputations, which I feel like I might have mentioned on the podcast before. But of course, it was a very famous book, probably because of his influence on Lovecraft, and I think that Lovecraft even mentions like Carcosa and a phrase which is used in this book. It's not like what you would think like when you think of like Lovecraft stories. Like it's very unique, and like I'm a fan of his other writings as well, like the story The Purple Emperor, and I believe there's a sequel to that, which I think might be called the Black Priest or something. But I might be wrong. But anyway, you'll be able to find it easily if you look up The Purple Emperor and its sequel, or just the works of Chambers in general. But yeah, he's a very interesting writer. He's written many interesting stories. The White Shadows is another one. But yeah, I just felt like that's like tacky to me and like lame, like when people just kind of like talk like are like, oh, Cthulhu and like these stories. Like I don't know, maybe I'm judging it unfairly because it was a trendsetter in a way, and now I'm reflecting on it through like the sort of deluge of Lovecraft stuff like that sort of ensued afterwards. Not that I haven't appreciated that stuff. I like the Color Out of Space movie and things like that, although that is a proper like Lovecraft adaptation, so in that case it does, and they don't do the same sort of name dropping thing where it's just like if you hear some of these names you just cringe
not like a Lovecraft
like,
country like, oh, it must be Shoggoths, like they're out there in the forest right now, like, we gotta run away from them. Like, ugh, okay, like
like Yog-Sothoth, who's that, like the goat with 1,000 young, like
brother.
I
think I'm glad that
and I just feel like the whole thing of that, like, well, why not, if it's gonna be like if it's gonna be realistic, like that actually isn't a realistic aspect, because these people who are involved in these cults, they don't worship the King in Yellow, they don't worship Cthulhu. Like if you're gonna represent this accurately, that's not a realistic aspect.
I think he was doing some dabbling. I'm kind of glad he didn't go like full Cthulhu at the end of it and make it like basically Lovecraft Country detective like story,
No.
Yeah, but also I do want to bring up like one probably his most maligned season 2 has a lot of really interesting elements in it. It's just like not very well executed, and it's like kind of a total mess. And so, but I think it's still, if you kind of vibe with like season 1 and you want to give it a try, I would say maybe check it out. The most interesting thing, I think it's David Morse, who plays the father of one of the main characters in season 2, and he's basically like a ridiculous kind of like boomer new age guru who basically lives at the Esalen Institute. Like there's a whole subplot in it about the Esalen Institute.
That, yeah.
And it
I
also
watched the first episode of True Detective season 1, but season 2 that is, but I couldn't. I will continue.
It's like overloaded. I think they produced it like too fast. They should have given him like 2 years to like work on it. Like they threw out all the scripts. He fired his writer's room and then like went back and hurriedly like wrote every episode by himself, like he did with the first season, but it was like rushed. And then Cary Fukunaga, his director, like fell off the project, and so it was like it was just the typical like Hollywood kind of like giving somebody who just blew up like too much power, but also like pressuring him to like pump out another big hit. And then like the addition of Vince Vaughn is kind of like didn't really work. But there is a lot of elements. There's like Bohemian Grove elements. There's like kind of Epstein like escort like sex party kind of things happening. There's a lot of threads with like the corruption of I think it's called Vinci is what he calls it, but it's basically Commerce, California, which is right near downtown LA, which is kind of fascinating. It's like a town that like almost like nobody like lives in, but it's just all like factories and warehouses and stuff. So like the idea there is that like I guess there's like a Colin Farrell plays this corrupt cop who's like really just a cutout for like all these corrupt like mafia interests that are like running stuff through commerce, and like the government is totally captured by some shady like political. He kind of blended together a few like LA area kind of a municipal government scandals into that, and I think there was a whole plot around like building a high-speed train. So he even had like trains in there, like a little LaRouche element. And it was all about like buying up land in the central, like scamming like land deals in like the Central Valley to buy the land for like the new high-speed train. And then there was like prostitution, blackmail kind of things going on at like Bohemian Grove, and like people were getting bumped off, and like there was like a lot of like stuff that was like, oh okay. And then there was like the Esalen fucking Institute like stuff kind of happening. And so there were a lot of ingredients that were interesting, but like, man, like, biting off California for season 2, that's a big bite that you're taking. There's a lot going on in California. So like, I feel like it didn't quite like, and it kind of slides into just being like a generic cop show as a result, because it's like so overloaded with shit. But I still think it might be intriguing to check out. I feel like season 3 was like more measured and like well constructed story wise, but it did have a little bit of a cop out at the end where it was like, oh, head fake. Like it's not a satanic murder cult. It's actually just like, one crazy person doing something. And so I would hope one day he's able to like really
solves the problem. Well, you know what? But that's what I was going to kind of say about True Detective Season 1, is that ultimately what it is like a very traditional, like, again, they're sort of like, maybe not for television, like, but in terms of, it's a very traditional detective story, like, with a certain gloss of, like, Lovecraftian weirdness. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, it's like, their struggles with their wives, their interpersonal dynamic, and then there's sort of this, ultimately pretty thin, not to, like, demean it too much, but, like, this kind of thin, like, philosophical arc where he goes from, like, spouting this, like, very adolescent kind of Thomas Ligotti derivative pessimism to, embracing the struggle of light versus dark, which, like, to me is, like, a little bit, like, well, again, like I said, like, struggling against darkness, like, in the sense of evil is good, but, I wonder if there's almost something, like, somehow, like, subversive, not in the sense of, like, subversive storytelling, but, like, subversive of the goal of, like, the, like, it's thing to, like, juke it out into this thing of, like, it's a universal battle between light and darkness in a very vague and abstract way. I don't know, and, like, just, like, I'm, like, whatever. I find like some of the stuff that a lot of people responded to that they thought was like so cool, like the Thomas Ligotti ripoff stuff.
Time is a flat circle.
To not be time is exactly, like lame, like a little bit lame. But I also like something that like I'll never be able to really isolate True Detective from that amazing article about Nick Pizzolatto.
The leather jacket motorcycle article
in the Atlantic. Yeah, I have to reinvent myself every day.
Yeah.
I want to find it. Was it in Vanity Fair?
I think it was Vanity. I think it was Vanity Fair. Yeah, he would say things like sometimes like he gets so raw when he's like working on he's writing out a script that like he'll go to a restaurant and he'll order like a rare steak and then he'll just like when it comes he'll just look at it and just like burst into tears and start crying.
Yeah, it's the one that has like these amazing like shots of him like wearing a leather jacket like in front of a motorcycle and like it's
in a way I feel like he was one of the I feel like True Detective on the one hand it kind of felt innovative, but it was also kind of like the last of something. I think it was the last of a certain I was talking about this with somebody the other day. Like I think in a way it was the last of a certain kind of like premium television in the so-called golden age of TV.
I think, a lot of people sort of
because it was right before it was produced right as Netflix started pumping out original content with House of Cards, and like that eventually over the next 5 years like led to this explosion of content that I can't help but like shaking the feeling that there's like an inherent soullessness in even a lot of like the premium TV content that has been created by Amazon or Apple or Netflix, or Hulu, etc. And I don't know, even HBO hasn't been impervious to it. Like it's almost getting like infected with like this kind of thing where like I don't know anymore. It's like it just feels like it is really not been. It's been a gilded age of TV, definitely for I'd say the last like 5 years. It's like an incredibly gilded age of TV. It's not actually good. Like so much of it is just, it's not like bad. They pumped a bunch of money into it. They got like talented people to shoot it and make it look like fancy, like a movie. And they get like increasingly A-list actors to come and act in it. And all that stuff is there, but there's like some kind of creative frisson like missing from it. And Pizzolatto, for all of his like picadillos and like eccentricities, was like one of these like breakout showrunners that was gonna like have a vision, and like a Pizzolatto show is gonna be a specific kind of show. And I feel like there aren't too many people that like have really been able to establish themselves in that way in like TV in the last like 5 years, despite this explosion in quote unquote premium TV. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think like, for what it's worth, like Nick Pizzolatto was like, like a creative writer, with a background in doing that kind of like mystery fiction.
Yeah.
Who had like sort of an auteur take, whereas there definitely became like a premium aesthetic that people then just tried to replicate like in an assembly line type way.
Yeah.
And that's like what, there's a certain aspect to premium TV where sometimes it empowered people who for whatever reason like had like a distinctive vision for something that they wanted to accomplish, but the number of people who are willing to do that or who position themselves in that way like kind of doesn't meet for whatever reason the demand for TV shows. And like also like I don't think that like the some of the people who might have like an inspiring, interesting idea in terms of TV might be like too dangerous or just too much for what it has to ultimately.
Exactly.
Detective, even though like it's from someone who definitely had a certain vision for something that people would respond to, it works in very established genre conventions, like extremely conventional at the end of the day. So
for sure.
Like it like stars aligned in that way. Whereas most of the time, like you're not gonna get something like that, and the sort of just premium vibe where you get things like Halt and Catch Fire or whatever, or like there's this amazing show I found on Amazon which ran for one season called Good Girls Revolt. Which is very similar to another show that we watched together like at one marathon like in LA called Vinyl.
Oh
that was
yeah.
on HBO. They spent like tons and tons of money on it.
Yes.
Just, like, crashed and burned.
If you want a good hate watch, if you want a good like Schadenfreude watch, like definitely check out Vinyl.
It sucks so much, and it's so like reaching and grasping. And the show Good Girls Revolt was the same thing. It was set at like a newspaper, you know. And in the first episode, they actually had to report on the Altamont concert, and it's this forced sort of thing where they're trying to be Mad Men, you know. And they're like be like you know, they have the sort of Don Draper sort of figure who like is shaping the narrative of the 70s, you know, because it's set a little bit, like, you know, it's like picking up where Mad and he's like, it's almost like, you know. If you did drugs, that made you a good person, but something has changed now. Something is, you know, like, it's like this Altamont situation.
Wow.
It's almost like something is ending in terms of the summer of love. You know, it's like very like...
It's like being there, watching history happen. Wow, yeah, very compelling.
Yeah,
isn't Gloria Steinem like a girl boss character in that?
I think that it's, oh my God, what's her name? Nora Ephron is like a sort of recurring character on the show. Yeah. Although Gloria Steinem, I don't know if she appears, but but it's kind of like, you can see that's like the essence of like the sort of quote unquote golden age of television, where there were a couple of things that sort of announced this thing that were really ultimately, what's interesting is that they really were ultimately in a way, conventional stories exploring the inner turmoil of middle-class white men.
Tony Soprano.
Don Draper. Yeah, Tony Soprano. And
even the cops in The Wire.
Protagonist. Yeah, McNulty.
Yep.
I guess he's more working class, but he's still very much the hero of The Wire. And he has, like, sort of domestic problems, and it's all about, you know, about his drive to solve these cases and do good police work, and like you know, he can't settle down. Like, his pathos is very much driving of a lot of the sort of you know, character driven plot of the Wire. And so it's an interesting aspect of that, where, and then sort of there's been multiple attempts to kind of replicate those molds, basically, like the molds cast by those shows, without really trying to invent something new. You know, people have kind of just tried to do something like that, and like real creativity has not really, not that I like can think of. You know, nothing like comes to mind that like, has really broken the mold set like during that time.
Well, I even feel like we're back to a point now where like, and I had like certain things with Mad Men, especially in the later seasons, but like I feel like Mad Men, like actual like that kind of script and like its perspective that it had would be considered kind of like too far out and like not what people would want if they were shopping it around today. Like it's like too idiosyncratic in certain ways.
In it.
Yeah, or it's not like, or it's not about like, it has these like little passing cameos with like maybe a famous person you'd recognize, but it's like not that type of show where it's like vinyl. It's like every 5 seconds it's like David Bowie, like CGI David Bowie pops up like, oh hey Richie, like how's the record label going? You know? It's like totally fucking exploitative and ridiculous, and just like dropping these fucking famous CGI people into the story all the time, and like that's really like a big nostalgia approach.
There's one where he met Elvis and he was like, come do a record with the Nasty Boys, and Elvis was like thinking about it, but like his evil manager like
Colonel Tom Parker wouldn't let him. That at least was accurate. But like,
we definitely need to do this Elvis episode, but Richie Finestra would be a good guest for that one. But
but like we have had a weird, I think it's kind of like a quiet crisis moment in like television production where I feel like they've really like not, I think I can confidently say like they're not kind of like making it better at the moment. Like we're not progressing. We're like kind of like drowning in content that is increasingly like mediocre in the literal sense of like it's trending towards some kind of median, and like there's not much like maybe with certain like half-hour sort of experimental like more low budget comedies, but like you're already boxed in with that format. So like in terms of drama, I feel like drama has become deeply predictable.
We should segue just because like we're going down, we're becoming Bret Easton Ellis's podcast and not like, you know, talking about like
the state of the movies.
Things. But I did. But one last thing.
It's dead. It's over.
That, like,
it's over. You can't be a writer anymore.
Significant.
It's like.
What are the most significant, like, you know, and the most you know, celebrated TV shows of the last, like True Detective definitely was one, and I think that did win like a lot of awards and stuff, and definitely got a lot of acclaim and a lot of like treatment. As you can see, and this is the Hollywood Reporter actually was the one that did the write up on Pixelato. But and the cover story, the new disruptors.
Yeah.
Yes.
But where are they now? There's no new disruptor. Nobody's disrupting shit anymore.
Well, I mean, Watchmen was probably the most, which is just like, again, like superhero and like shitty, and that's like an interesting example, like kind of, not to say that this is, and I guess that maybe, I don't know, maybe the main character in Watchmen like but it was interesting because like on one hand Watchmen is supposed to kind of be empowering and like I think it was kind of designed to make amends on behalf of the creator for like personal guilt that he had. And so as a result, like obviously the character played by Regina King like can't really be like this sort of deeply flawed individual. And I guess maybe the protagonist of True Detective, I guess Woody Harrelson's character, and definitely also they ultimately were knights, noble knights, as I think there is kind of like a sort of wish fulfillment or sort of heroic aspect to all these men, but they're anti-heroes, they're flawed, and like their flaws are part of where like the great drama comes from. But like if you're trying to do this sort of thing where it's designed almost to be this easy form of like repentance for something, like by this industry that doesn't actually reflect like in any practical way the values that it espouses, then like that kind of thing like doesn't really, if you want to have like a black female lead on the show that's like run all by white people, like then it's not going to be this probing analysis of like this flaws or this sort of the failure or the figure of Don Draper, just because for one, the people don't know anything, and to be able to write about this, maybe they have like staff writers of color who can do something like on certain
they do on Watchmen whatever, they did but even that is like a fraught kind of relationship of like like maybe there's and a also, tell me like, what I want to hear vibe
like
to
this
it.
Weird thing about superheroes, like the plot is like just mired in like all this, but like it's just we've gone from an age of anti-heroes to heroes. Shondaverse stuff, like Olivia Pope, and how which of course she is a female showrunner. So like who come to mind is like black female heroes who are like anti-heroes who have like these complex personas, which people do respond to, like How to Get Away with Murder and
for sure. Olivia Pope,
those sort of people really come to mind because like, and you can see the difference between something that's made up by like Damon Lindelof because he feels bad about the Ta-Nehisi Coates article that he read versus like someone who like is trying to do like
like Shonda's not afraid to like paint in some kind of gray colors, moral gray colors and stuff like that, and it's much more interesting as a result.
Yes, definitely.
I think even I would even say there are a few things that I've kind of like liked over the last 5 years, and like while some of his stuff I think is like atrocious, I think Ryan Murphy's The Assassination of Gianni Versace was another kind of example of that, where I think like there was a certain way where I think like as a gay man telling a story that was basically about a bunch of gay characters and a gay serial killer who is like an absolute psychopath and is like not somebody you can turn and really into a good guy, he was able to do that kind of very masterfully. And it was like really I thought it was really, really good. Like maybe the best thing he's ever done. And I think like he was free to like really like play around with that character's portrayal and like not shy away from like the kind of scary parts of it, but also like the tragic parts of his character. It's like stuff like that. So I think like like putting the Damon Lindelofs, those types of people in charge of like, I don't know, diversifying Hollywood seems like just actually diversify it. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you're going to do those types of stories, just like get people in charge of it who are like, don't have this like scared, like rich, white, like liberal fucking complex going on. But also like a little bit of a knowledge that they're going to get like a big pat on the back. They're going to get rewards. They're going to get work. They're going to get clout from like basically.
To truly do that would require like institutional change.
Yes.
That would like not actually happen. Like, it's one thing to like hire, but then there's a question of like, okay, well, who's hiring? Like the same people who have been in charge, like that's the problem, So, and I think that's part of the reason why, like, to go bring back to perspective, like if you really want something that's gonna like treat these issues, like it's not gonna probably come out of like Hollywood because it would be like a self-indictment and like require like a massive re-examination of like some of this, like the nature of Hollywood as an institution, I think.
Sure, yeah.
Like,
big questions there, basically, to consider, because they have a monopoly on like high scale film production, not just a literal one, but like a psychological monopoly. People feel like they kind of like can't make movies. It's worse than music in a way, because people at least can like record things in their bedroom and like release them online. But I feel like there's this like weird kind of like psychic block of like, oh, you can't make movies unless like you're in Hollywood. But like it's easier than ever to make some kind of movie if you have like minimal equipment and maybe a few people that have some talent. Like you could really do it, but like we're stuck in the box like of the Hollywood mind box a little bit. So
because it's not about like creativity for many people, it's about like sustainability and like a livelihood, and like the people who are going to swoop down and be like, we have all this money, like it's going to be the people who like want to own what you made, and to like control it, and to
it's Mr. Global,
be able to it's Mr. Global, but
anyways, or these Silicon Valley nerds that like, for all you could say about like the corrupt old Hollywood system, there were at least like executives that kind of like cared about like putting effort into like crafting movies, like developing them and like taking time with them to like make sure they're as like good as they can be. Then the Netflix people just back up a truck of money and like just dump it all over everything, and then say like, you're an artist, right? You can do it. And then like you make whatever you want, and then they send you notes based on like algorithmic analysis that are like completely like, no offense, like autistic. Like they're like, you can't have a shot of a boy like riding a bike down the street at a minute 2:30. You have a shot of a boy riding a bicycle down the street. Our analysis shows that audiences don't like shots of boys riding down the bike, riding down the street on a bike at 2 minutes and 30 seconds
really?
in. So
I haven't seen those.
Yeah, no, there's been like anecdotal references. I heard that somewhere, that there's like, that's the kind of notes that Netflix gives you, is like these bizarro. I also know that like they switch out. You ever notice that the reason Netflix has such kind of shitty generic looking portraits, like when you search for stuff, it's not like the movie poster, right?
I did notice like one thing, like, where they pick like people who are popular. Like, I remember like there's just like a picture for some movie like Twilight or something, or some movie that like Anna Kendrick was in for like 2 seconds. Like the picture, or it was even something like, that was like some kind of violent thriller or crime movie or something, and the picture is just like Anna Kendrick smiling and like people love her.
That's being done by an algorithm that is basically looking at your viewing habits and your demographic information, and like they will even, they'll do it like by race or something. Like there's a movie with like mostly black cast, but like a white person searching, and there's like a white person in the movie, they'll like put the white person on the cover. Like it's stuff like that, and so it's like very
in it for 2 minutes.
Exactly.
Because he's famous now.
So like they're doing that stuff on like a deep level, and it's like none of it's coming from a source of like creativity, and
it's
sucks.
the opposite, because like it's an evil AI that like is incapable of like accessing like the true spirit of art. And like, to be fair, like I think that we've like this stuff, like, well, maybe not so much. I guess maybe not True Detective. True Detective came out on like the tail end, I guess. But like a lot of the sort of goal, like that was the, I just was scrolling through the Wikipedia article about True Detective, trying to dig up that Nick Pizzolatto article, which, I'll see if I ever can find it again. They might have deleted it because it was too embarrassing. I can't find the quote about having to reinvent himself every day.
Yeah, I do remember that though.
But anyway, so but there's someone who said like this was an exclamation point on like the golden age of television or something. But I think that even before that was before like really what has defined like the sort of mass media in like the last 10 years, like, or it got rolling somewhat before like it really started to cement itself, which is like the Marvel stuff and the Disney hegemony, like really consolidating, like the Disney Star Wars and the Marvel comic stuff, like, which really is like just not healthy, and is like about like there's not like nothing more hollow than that at the end of the day. People like have done interesting things with those media like before, and it's possible to exercise creativity within those confines, but ultimately it's something that people have done when they had like no other option, or they found themselves in that position. Like the fact that this is something that's like the highest aspiration, like these types of characters who are like defined by what their powers are.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, I don't know, like, it's just like whether they can freeze things or shoot fire, you know, like what the, you know,
it's so kind of soulless and like mechanistic, and
you know, it's very you know, it's paganistic in a way.
Yeah.
It's like very odd and peculiar, you know. Not trying to make like a totalistic statement, you know. I think that there might be some like definitely think that there's been some like good stuff like done in that medium, especially prior to its complete like capture of our culture and like its total Disneyfication. But like, you know, I don't know, it's just like a real shift, and that you definitely can see that like melding with the whole like the IP where everything is like a universe, you know, like the Marvel paradigm, like you know, spreading to this thing. But I guess this is a complete tangent. Really, this is supposed to be about the representation of ritual abuse.
Yes.
But I guess we're all being ritually abused by Disney.
In a way. And it's basically and we're not much closer, unfortunately, to having more things basically, you know, come out that would like kind of, it doesn't seem like we're getting closer to that. We're getting further away. We're going deeper into the fantasy of the spandex superheroes and all that stuff.
It's all WandaVision. We're all in
WandaVision. God. Like, we're in what, phase 4 of like the MCU now or some shit like that. Exciting. I mean, now TV innovation is like WandaVision and The Mandalorian is like what, you know,
like
is being...
WandaVision, I haven't seen WandaVision, to be fair, but I feel like it's in black and white or something, so like it's just considered to be innovative. Like, you know, parts of it are in black and white or something like that, or like it has aspects of it that are like, you know, a send-up of sitcoms or something, so it's like, it's all like, you know, how innovative, because like it's a rom-com, but like the main character is like Aunt May and Uncle Ben, you know.
God.
It's like
so that's it. Now they're going.
It's innovative because there's never been a superhero movie where it was just Uncle Ben and Aunt May. You know, like it might be.
So I guess, you know, I mean, is this going to be now that they're going to...
Or Joker, you know, Joker, how innovative, how amazing. Like, you know, it's a shitty ripoff of Taxi Driver, but it's
and
the Joker.
King of New York,
like, that was what passes for innovation.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we're rediscovering, like, you know, a shitty pastiche of 40-year-old movies, but because, like, you know, it's technically... in the DC universe, and this man is actually the Joker. It's innovative because, like, you know, this movie has existed for 40 years, but you've never seen it with the Joker before. Like, so that's like,
I think they're basically going out now and they are colonizing other genres outside of the superhero genre, and they're going to try to take over them as much as possible, so that you will have basically the biggest romantic comedies are not going to be Nora Ephron movies with like Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. It's gonna be like one of it. It's like, you know, like a Scarlet Witch and like
Tom Hanks will be playing like, you know, the Beyonder, and like, you know, Meg Ryan will be playing Madam Web. And
it's gonna be like, you know, kind of like Marriage Story, but with like Cyclops and Jean Grey.
I can see him like getting pissed off, and like, you know, he like is taking his glasses off and like breaking a hole in the wall, and like Jean Grey like takes their like baby and like is like, I'm leaving. You know?
I'm leaving.
Like, I'm sorry.
You showed me your true face.
Happen, and people are going to like praise it.
Yeah, it'll
like,
win fucking
so
Oscars.
Clearly.
Yeah. This is it's a dark moment we're in. It's a dark winter in Hollywood. Okay.
Like,
so
you know, I can't control my optic blast. Like...
oh my God, yes. Okay. All right. We'll move on now.
Sorry,
that was fun.
Huge tangent.
Huge tangent. It's okay. We're at 2:43.
I hope that was an adequate answer to that question.
I hope so too. Yeah.
Not like it represents me, you know, the challenge.
So you don't think you're really an ant?
No, I wasn't an ant. Like the assignment, according to Miss Skolnick, was like this hippy dippy teacher that we had. Your spirit animal could be one that like embodied your characteristics, but also would challenge you. So the ant was like representative of all things that were gonna happen with me.
Conformity.
Yeah, conformity, like drudgery, like yuppie, meaninglessness.
number 6 from Computer Coward. Have you guys ever directly experienced shaitan, Satan, demons, jinn in your life that made you actually spooked? What happened? Like in The Exorcist, how the demon came into the house and then the girl's body. It was not abstract or deniable. Well,
definitely
I feel like
nothing that wasn't abstract or deniable. Yeah, we did answer this question kind of.
Yeah,
we talked about whether we experience anything.
I guess the specificity here is like
it might have been out by the time the was asked.
Did we see jinn and like in a way that was undeniable? No, I've never seen kind of anything like that happen.
Definitely nothing that was undeniable. I've known people who have told me that they had something where it was like they like straight up I saw like a demon. And like it was not deniable, but I haven't had that experience.
Same. I know people who have seen like beings on ayahuasca, like little like kind of fairy jinn beings.
Well, you've taken that. Did you not see any beings? No, you didn't.
No, I never did. Never did. Yeah, kind of bummed out about that. But also, I was told that you shouldn't trust them necessarily. Like they can be harmless, but like even though they weren't called jinns. They were, I mean, maybe these are the Klaxton men or something like that. But basically, it was like, don't. I think I heard once, you were supposed to say if you encountered one of these beings, like, "Are you my teacher?" And then I don't know, almost like a leprechaun. Like they're not allowed to lie to you directly. So if they say like, yes, I'm your teacher, then like you can kind of kick it with them and talk to them. But if they say anything else evasive,
not allowed to lie?
I don't know if leprechaun, but it feels like
I guess they can't lie directly.
Yeah, it's like a weird trick of like, I'm technically, but like the fine print is like I can say something manipulative and like, we're all like everybody's like a teacher, and then you'd be like, get out of here, Jin. Like, it's supposed to be like that. Right. I never saw it though.
It's like, are you a cop? Like kind of,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's literally like, are you a cop? Like they can't legally say that they're not a cop if they are, or something like that. Right. But I have not directly experienced that, so I guess I can't really speak to it, but other people have.
Right. Right. Yeah, I will say two things. Well, for one, I was recently watching some documentary about Mothman, and they had an interview with the guy who wrote the movie for the Mothman prophecies.
Okay.
He said something interesting that was like, when it comes to like the supernatural or, the whatever you want to call it. I don't really like the term supernatural myself, but it's probably what he used. He said like, there's people who are Mozarts and they're Salieri's. There's people who want to, who want to experience or are fascinated by it, and then there's people who actually experience it. One being the former being the Salieri's, and the other being the Mozart, and he was like, but I'm happy being like, a Salieri, I guess. Himself never having experience. He was very like sort of sweaty guy talking about how his life in LA, like writing these movies. But I do have. This is definitely not abstract or deniable, but I didn't mention it because I thought it was like too like not really impressive enough the first time we got this question. But since we got it twice, I will mention it. I do have a memory that I don't even remember, like if it really happened or if it was a dream or what. And I would sometimes when I was young have like these sort of sleep paralysis type visions where I would see people come into the room and then turn into objects, like a certain thing. And one that I saw when I was young, I had like this really, strong kind of like, when I would lie in my bed at night, I would always, I was afraid of the dark. I think everyone is a little bit, to this day. Like, obviously, the dark, it's primarily scary. So I would usually keep the hallway light on, the door ajar, and I would, watch the door, very intently, almost like in sort of fear that something would appear in the door, which is odd because, thinking really you'd be worried about the dark areas of the room, and not the light area of the room. But I think that also part of it was that there was an illustration of the famous Manhattan alien abduction in a book about alien abduction that I bought at the Scholastic Book Fair when I was young. That really influenced my sort of fear that something would appear in the doorway, because that was how the illustration depicted it. That was the one that was witnessed, as Stephen Greer famously said.
When they threatened to kidnap
it was
the
allegedly
UN.
Witnessed by the UN General Secretary. Yeah. the story that I heard that was in this book for fourth graders about the event was that he saw it, like the woman sort of being levitated out of her bedroom window with these entities towards this saucer. But anyway, so there was an illustration in this book of the abduction and the gray kind of appearing in the doorway, and that was something that always scared me. I think that even before that, even before I had seen that illustration, before I had that other fear of the door, I think that I had another kind of feeling that there was something appear, and I have a memory of seeing like appearing in the doorway like an anthropomorphized, like I'm getting like kind of chills as I'm saying this. I don't want to like
Okay.
even like I don't like to contemplate it too much, and really it's bizarre because like I can't even really say if this truly did happen, but I do have a memory of seeing like this anthropomorphized cat. Like if you want to like look up what it is, you can look up Bake Neko, the yokai.
Wow.
And the illustration in the Wikipedia article of Bake Neko, because I looked up before this like cat Jin or something, cat spirit, something like that, like and this is like really exactly kind of what I don't have a cat or anything, and it wasn't cat sized, it was adult sized when I was a kid, which I guess maybe some of these things are sometimes depicted as being in this sort of folklore. And I do have a memory, I'm not saying this is not abstract or not deniable, but I do have a memory of seeing like in this sort of bright light, and it's interesting because in this article, actually, I discovered this for the first time when I was sort of looking this up, having been reminded of it by this question. And it says, the sight of a cat standing on its hind legs to reach a lamp, its face lit with anticipation, could have seemed eerie and unnatural like a yokai, just like a speculation about, the source of this idea of this cat, yokai, this quote-unquote changed cat.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It's very scary. Very terrifying.
In the luminescence of the light, it was like very lit up by the light, So yeah, I have this, and it looked very much like this. It even had like this sort of thing on its head, even as kind of headdress that you kind of see in the picture. And I've never seen this before, like literally today when I looked this up. But the headdress thing it also had. So I have a memory of that, but I don't actually know if that was a dream or what. And just I wouldn't even have mentioned it, but because we asked this question twice, I'll just give that tidbit.
Wow.
That I do have that memory.
Yeah. Very scary looking. I'm looking at like fan art about it right now. This demon cat is sus. So I feel for you.
Yeah. There's also on the Wikipedia article for it. There's like this shape-shifted cat woman. It's a kabuki play. It's an illustration of a kabuki play. It depicts a cat that is shapeshifted into an old woman, and you can see the picture, the giant face of the cat in the background. Yeah, very spooky.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Anyway,
okay.
So maybe we'll do that when we do our Japan episode about otters or
shape-shifting animals. Sure.
About the Bake Neko.
For sure. Okay, so let's move on to number 7. Oh, this one should be fun. You want to read that?
Yeah. I like that SJ are storming the vampire's castle, but what's your take on Mark Fisher's RIP work? Love to hear your thoughts on capitalist realism and, quote, the weird and the eerie concepts as they feel very SJ. Cheers, lads. I haven't actually read capitalist realism. I have read the Vampire's Castle, essay. But I vaguely recall, hearing about, the weird and the eerie as concepts in that. That's another book by him is The Weird and the Eerie. And he's talked about, this would be interesting to read, actually. Some of the most haunting and anomalous fiction of the 20th century belongs to these two modes. Yeah, okay, that's interesting. Sounds kind of like literary criticism. I mean, talking about H.P. Lovecraft, H.G. Wells, I feel like maybe some of this has just been assimilated. I feel like I might be able to predict, the content of this book well enough without having read it, but it might be interesting to read and to discuss, because I am into that. In particular, the imagery of vampires. We've discussed the concept of dracularity as a term of analysis.
Yes, exactly.
In exploring subliminal jihad-related topics. I think that when I first heard about this, which I think I honestly first heard about exiting the Vampire Castle on Chapo or something back, I've since long stopped listening to Chapo, but, or Capo Fash House.
Capo Fash House, yeah, exactly.
Yes,
it's hard to really,
but I was intrigued instantly by the title.
Sure, of course.
Right.
How can you not be? And like he's super it's crazy how influential. It's like I really have pretty much never gone looking for Mark Fisher, but when I started listening to podcasts more, and as this kind of ecosystem of like left wing kind of like quasi Marxist, and then also these like dirtbag kind of Brooklyn podcasts were all launching, it's like every single one of them was talking about Mark Fisher all the time, talking about the Vampire Castle, talking about like, I mean, if you go down the list, like Zero Books, like Red Scare, Chapo, and probably a bunch of others too. It just seems to like always be like a huge kind of like almost like the North Star for navigating like this era. And I guess you could say he committed suicide in 2017, so that was actually probably around the time that I feel like there was a huge explosion of interest in his work, like Capitalist Realism, which I haven't read. I kind of would want to, and I'd like to read The Weird and the Eerie as well.
Is that also literary criticism?
Capitalist Realism was more, I think, based upon I don't know if it was literary criticism.
Oh, the idea that there's no alternative to capitalism.
Yeah, like the Frederick Jameson. Yeah, the Frederick Jameson kind of quote.
Kind of like end of history type thing. Yeah.
Yes.
You're right.
But there's a lot of cultural stuff mixed into it. Like I think he was somebody who would talk about, you know, the popularity of like apocalyptic and like zombie, you know, narratives and things like that, and how like that's that's kind of a feature or an expression of capitalist realism that we constantly, like the only other alternative we can think of is like literally the end of the world and just like everything collapsing and being destroyed because like there's no capacity anymore. I do think that's like broadly that is a kind of like operative concept that we are dealing with in our world, is that there really is like no exit ramp from capitalism. You know, like it feels like everywhere you go, like it's inescapable unless you go to the DPRK. But even there, like surrounded, like they're surrounded by capital, you know, that's like, it's always want to get its tentacles in, like, you know, the first chance it gets. So there, that lack of like alternativity, I guess. And
some of the ideas here like remind me of someone who like I'm a huge like, you know, obviously I have some critiques as I do of everyone, but like definitely probably like the contemporary like philosophical author I'm the biggest stan of is Wallah Halak, you know, and his book Restating Orientalism definitely goes into this idea of like primary domains, and I think the kind of what he's talking what Fisher talks about in Capitalist Realism is similar to the idea of primary domains, which, you know, Halak says that capitalism is the primary domain where things are sort of defined as like the idea in Fisher maybe of business ontology, which he raises that everything is understood in capitalist or in business terms. You know, everything is related to like the capital that it produces, or that's the primary system of value. Whereas other domains, you know, he talks a lot about Halak talks a lot about Islamic law in particular in this sense. You know, are sort of set to the wayside. But at one time, you know, capitalism itself was a subversive domain, and the idea is that, of course, subversive domains can at times come to be dominant again in the future. Although, you know, this is just me reading the Wikipedia article on capitalist realism, but at the bottom is a section called Realism. And you know, this article needs more complete citations, so we'll see. But it says, the realism aspect of capitalist realism and its inspiration, socialist realism, is based on Jacques Lacan's distinction between the real and realities, such as capitalist realism, capitalism being a quote-unquote reality, which are ideologically based understandings of the world that reject facts that lie outside their interpretations. Fisher posits that an appeal to the real, which is suppressed by capitalist realism, may begin to deconstruct the pervasiveness of the ideology. Fisher points to areas such as climate change, mental health, and bureaucracy that can be highlighted to show the weaknesses and gaps in capitalist realism. I definitely agree with an aspect of that, and I think that this resonates a lot with what Halak might say about some of these things, in particular climate change, as like an indictment of the system of capitalism, showing like that its rationality is tied to its reasons and its own sort of self-producing goals. But I do wonder like about this idea of it's very hard to deal in terms of this like ideologically unbound real. To me, like when I see like the phrase "the real," I always think of al-Haq. I think of Allah. That is the real. Who calls himself such in the Quran, which but is that like an ideologically bound reality, and the real is separate from that? Obviously, it's our goal to achieve that real, but I don't know if like Fisher would agree. Like, the thing, like, how do we, like, how do you define that, which he probably doesn't even believe in, to get to this unbounded truth. Very difficult thing. And I feel like that kind of is something that you could say is a problem with the idea of the vampire castle, where, it's trying to get to this, like, core class-based analysis, avoiding these sort of identitarian things.
Traps.
But that is itself very
camps.
difficult, and there is sort of... there might be an identitarian aspect to class. It's very hard to like get to this purity that is maybe sought for in certain ways. I mean, that's the thing about maybe this is why, because in reading this essay, Exiting the Vampire Castle, it's very hard to understand why he refers to it as a vampire castle. And I think that maybe the reason is a reference to Dracula, and that, Jonathan Harker has such a difficult time escaping from that castle. Yeah. And I think that maybe that is, although, the solutions that are offered, I think especially in its sort of representation by others, like, and its interception by others who have read it, like this promotion by certain podcasters and, like, the sort of post-left people, like, there does seem to be kind of like this easy solution, just walk out the front door and deny, and embrace like a fully class-based analysis.
Stop doing ID poll like, and just embrace class analysis and like that's it, done.
Yes,
which
this is an interesting part of his essay. This is an interesting part of his essay that I kind of wanted to read. This is the section called "Inside the Vampire's Castle." The first configuration is what I came to call the Vampire's Castle. Again, I just feel like this guy has this sort of fascination with the weird and the eerie, so like there's a certain appeal to the image. But anyway, the Vampire's Castle specializes in propagating guilt. It is driven by a priest's desire to excommunicate and condemn, an academic pedant's desire to be the first to be seen to spot a mistake, and a hipster's desire to be one of the in-crowd. The danger in attacking the Vampire's Castle is that it can look as if, and it will do everything it can to reinforce this thought, that one is also attacking the struggles against racism, sexism, heterosexism. So, this is, like, obviously just really, like, you can kind of see how this is something that I really hate, like, just, like, the way that everything converges on this, like, culture war bullshit, like, that we just always have to deal with. Like, it's not saying anything about idpol, like, in that word, but it's, like, obviously here. But far from being the only legitimate expression of such struggles, the Vampire's Castle is best understood as a bourgeois liberal perversion and appropriation of the energy of these movements. I definitely think that like, there's obviously truth to a lot of this. The Vampire's Castle was born, I definitely think this happened with, to an extent with Black Lives Matter, where it was something that was, like, genuine, but in many cases, like, and
even their beloved DSA that the Fisher fans, on the podcast love so much, like, for sure.
I think that in a lot of cases, there's still, like, aspects of the Black Lives Matter movement that, like, have not been, I wouldn't say are fully co-opted, but I think that in a lot of cases, like, people listened just long enough, and with each new sort of development in this struggle, like, people in power listen just long enough to think, how can we use this to our advantage.
Yes.
And then, they disengage. But anyway, the Vampire's Castle was born the moment when the struggle not to be defined by identitarian categories became the quest to have identities recognized by a bourgeois big other. The privilege I certainly enjoy as a white male consists in part in my not being aware of my ethnicity and my gender, and it is a sobering and revelatory experience to occasionally be made aware of these blind spots. But rather than seeking a world in which everyone achieves freedom from identitarian classification, the Vampire's Castle seeks to corral people into identicamps, where they are forever defined in terms set by dominant power, crippled by self-consciousness, and isolated by a logic of solipsism, which insists that we cannot understand one another unless we belong to the same identity group. I've noticed a fascinating... I think this is like a little bit of a straw man, to be honest, but anyway, I've noticed a fascinating magical inversion projection disavowal mechanism whereby the sheer mention of class is now automatically treated as if that means one is trying to downgrade the importance of race and gender. In fact, the exact opposite is the case, as the Vampire's Castle uses an ultimately liberal understanding of race and gender to obfuscate class. In all of the absurd and traumatic Twitter storms about privilege earlier this year, it was noticeable the discussion of class privilege was entirely absent. The task, as ever, remains the articulation of class, gender, and race, but the founding move of the Vampire's Castle is the disarticulation of class from other categories. The problem with the Vampire's Castle was set up to solve is this. How do you hold immense wealth and power while also appearing as a victim, marginal and oppositional? The solution was already there, in the Christian church. So the VC has recourse to all the infernal strategies, dark pathologies, and psychological torture instruments Christianity invented, and which Nietzsche described in his Genealogy of Morals.
Okay.
The priesthood of bad conscience, this nest of pious guilt-mongers, is exactly what Nietzsche predicted when he said that something worse than Christianity was already on the way. Now here it is. The Vampire's Castle feeds on the energy and anxieties and vulnerabilities of young students, but most of all lives by converting the suffering of particular groups, the more, quote, marginal the better, into academic capital. The most lauded figures of the Vampire Castle are those who have spouted a new market in suffering. Those who can find a group more oppressed and subjugated than any previously exploited will find themselves promoted through the ranks very quickly. So I think that there's aspects of this which are definitely true.
Yeah.
And I think that we've talked about them in the past in the podcast,
Mhm.
but I'm more interested in discussing how a lot of this is whining from someone who obviously, like, you know, feels like attacked on Twitter for, like, being white, you know, like, and also, like, the whole aspect of, like, Christianity and Nietzsche.
Yeah, that kind of jumped
like,
out at me as the most, like,
Yeah.
Really?
Yes, like, for one, like, there's, like, a fundamental idea that, like, priests are bad in their desire to excommunicate and condemn, which, you know, like, maybe, you know, I'm Muslim, so, like, I wouldn't want to be excommunicated, like, you know, I wouldn't want to be condemned by a priest, like, in a medieval sense. You know, it's funny because, in a way, the Gothic, which he's obviously invoking here, and the whole thing of the Vampire's Castle and the Illusion of Dracula, the whole thing about the Gothic is about, like, sort of a romantic medievalism in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting that he's sort of using this medieval imagery
Mhm.
of, like, the sort of priest and the castle to create this sort of spook or specter. And then, you know, of course, his lodestar in all this is the 19th century Nietzsche, who, like, you know, not that everything attached to him, like, you know, not that he sometimes gets a bad rap for just being, like, an out-and-out Nazi, but, like, you know,
Or inspiring
that's not,
them.
like, unwarranted. That's
Yeah.
not, like, totally, you know, like, yeah, like, you know, there's many dimensions of Nietzsche's writing, and you can't, like, blame Nazi Germany on Nietzsche, but, like, his antipathy towards, like, the slave morality of, like, Christianity,
The Nazarene scum,
like,
basically.
Semitic like, that is part of, like, a larger, well, it's just, like, interesting that, like, we would, you know, even in this whole thing where it's like, well, let's, you know, or maybe we're going to do, let's get back to the real, you know, what's real, what's really important, you know, we're going to write off, like, basically alienating a bunch of, like, poor people in the world who might be Christian, you know, or might have, like, revere priests, for instance, by something fundamentally bad that needs to condemn, you know, like,
That's an interesting.
you know,
I mean,
what
yeah,
about
just as he talks about kind of like the solipsism in the Vampire Castle in academia and media, he's kind of like committing some of the same offenses of, like,
it's incredibly bourgeois academic to, like, invoke the genealogy of morals of all things.
Yeah.
In fact, it's arguably, like, as annoying as it might be to have, like, some contemporary academic be like, you know, as Judith Butler says, or, like, as, like, Gilles Deleuze says, like, you know, we are all re-territorializing towards, like, a cyborg existence of rhizomatic being or whatever. Like, you know, it's almost more annoying for someone to be like Nietzsche, like, you know, very uncritically to, like, evoke it, like, and be like his genealogy of morals. Like, come on, like, give me a break. Like, you know, I'm not saying there's something of value in Nietzsche, but, like, to say
like,
that, like, he predicted, like, the woke movement in 2013, like, if you read Nietzsche, what you can really see coming is the Third Reich. Like, that, like, you know, his, like, love of Wagner, like, you can, like, you know, read Untimely Meditations. I know he mentioned the genealogy of morals, but read Untimely Meditations, some of what Nietzsche has to say about art and, like, about Wagner, and tell me that, like, you know, what, the big concern you come away with, that, you know, the big, prescience that you feel, and that is of the SJWs, you know, like it's like give me a break.
It hits off, and I think it kind of like it's interesting because like if you look at a lot of the like very successful podcasts, like the kind of dirtbag leftist podcasts, they also embrace a certain kind of like Nietzschean kind of cool, distant, ironic nihilism that I feel like that there's something maybe like that element is kind of what resonates with them in Mark Fisher's work as much as any of the other stuff is kind of like I feel like that's a crypto, like, don't worry, like I'm still a cool Gen Xer. Let me quote Nietzsche right now and like talk about how Christianity sucks. You know, like it's like that kind of thing, like and like that's comforting to like even if you're getting out of the vampire castle, you don't have to reappraise anything about religion or like even like where it's positioned in the world in the 21st century. It's like like even what Nietzsche had to say about religion in the late 1800s. Religion was, or you know, I don't know, anybody else like Marx or Lenin for that matter, like they were dealing with a very different power arrangement, I guess, in terms of like religion being like a huge ideological force that was like integrated with governments and had a very actively reactionary stance towards any kind of like progressive change. They were like very, not to say they like aren't embedded in power structures today at all, but I feel like at this point, like I don't really see the priority in like dunking on Christianity using Nietzsche quotes like to get at like ID poll people. Like it's a weird kind of thing. Maybe he thinks that would resonate with the people that he's criticizing. You know what you guys are being? You're being like some crazy Christians. And like, you know, would the people in London or Manhattan be like, oh, no, like not Christians. Ooh, like, oh, we must stop. You know what I mean? It's like accepting this certain kind of framing of like you're doing religious suppression. And it's bad because it's like religious. It's not bad because you're all these other more valid reasons that he gives, like that this is more of like a strategy, like a broader social, socio-political, economic strategy to like neutralize any kind of like revolutionary energy and like co-opt it and then like build this evil castle that monopolizes kind of like opinion production, like sentimental production in our economy, and I don't know, frames our reality and all these things. But to take the pot shot at like Christianity at this point, it's like I mean, it was 2013, so things might have still been. I mean, you know, Pizzolatto, True Detective, talked a lot about being like reading Nietzsche and being influenced by that. It pops up quite often. I just like you won't catch me bringing up Nietzsche as like the way people would like quote, you know, Marx or something. Like no.
You know, he's not. You know, he's all about how the world really is. You know, he's atheistic, which is like. Not really, like, I almost feel like these people don't really read Nietzsche. I almost, like, because, like, or at least not carefully. Mm-hmm. Maybe they do or did, like, a while ago, but, like, you know, I almost feel like, I don't know, like, to me, like, it's, and another thing that, this is part of the reason why I prefer our formulation of Dracularity, because something that I feel like is, like, missed is, like, the... like ideological or even materialistic context of the idea of the vampire's castle. What is the castle of the vampire is the idea of someone who I feel like as a historian of the weird, the eerie might want to be sensitive to this. Mm-hmm. But the idea of the vampire's castle is a product of like a 19th century a British Anglo, like, you know, I guess British really, you know, Bram Stoker being Irish, like but of course there have been other vampire things like Polidori, but like that's a colonial like fear of like what, you know, this sort of Eastern, medieval specter, this gothic, exactly, like
Oriental, Eastern European, like swarthy, like old world, like kind of a mystical barbaric specter in the East.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, if anything, you could say the Vampire Castle is kind of like some kind of weird stand-in for like we're being too psychologically like Stalinist in like our cancel culture habits, and like we need to escape from this evil Eastern vampire castle that is like, you know, making people like cancel each other and have show trials on Twitter. I mean, I don't think that's really what he's going for, but it's like that lines up more than the formulation he's using.
Well, I mean, that whole idea. Well, I guess like yeah, I think that there is like an aspect of the same thing. Like this might be just you supervening your general interest in people being unfair to Stalin, but I think that there actually is an aspect of that. Because in some of the criticism of Stalin, there is like an idea of like, oh, he's Hunnic, he's like this Eastern
Trotsky.
Despot,
it's his essential like Caucasoid character.
Yeah, he's the Oriental despot who and also that's the past, and it's this world of superstition and fear and like the idea, and like Dracula is all about us rational 19th century people using our tools such as hypnosis and trains to fight against this power of like the ancient past. I'm trying to find like one of my favorite quotes from Untimely Meditations to just cast a certain light on this not one of my favorites, but one of the most striking quotes from. This is what Nietzsche has to say. And to be fair, this is one of his earlier works. He says this is about like history, and he's also kind of inveighing against academics and how like there isn't culture. The reason is that history confuses the feelings and sensibility when these are not strong enough to assess the past by themselves. He who no longer dares to trust himself but involuntarily asks of history, "How ought I to feel about this?" finds his timidity gradually turns him into an actor and that he is playing a role, usually indeed many roles, and therefore playing them badly and superficially. Gradually, all congruity between the man and his historical domain is lost. We behold pert little fellows associating with the Romans as though they were their equals, and they root and burrow in the remains of the Greek poets as though these too were corpora for their dissection, and they were as vilia for their own literary corpora may be. As their own literary corpora may be. Suppose one of them is engaged with Democritus, as I always feel like asking, why not Heraclitus, or Philo, or Bacon, or Descartes, or anyone else? Why then? Why does it have to be a philosopher? Why not a poet or an orator? And why a Greek at all? Why not an Englishman or a Turk? So you can kind of see how like there's a certain sensibility here. There's another one that is truly great. The same type of thing where he talks about German spirit and life. That is like
that sounds fun.
Very, very, very great. Yes, yeah. The idea that like why should a German study when you're dissociated from the sort of spiritual atmosphere of these historical moorings, you sort of lose sense with these sort of academic pedants. They stop caring about like, oh, why would you even study Greek? Why not? It's just study Turks for all for all that matters. So ultimately starts talking about spirit and life. I'm trying to find it because I remember it being pretty great. This whole book, a lot of it, Untimely Meditations, a lot of these essays in here are all about, Wagner and how he will be a new Alexander, a counter Alexander, who will return the Hellenic spirit to the Orientalized earth, and get rid of the dirty Oriental Christianity, to reverse what Alexander did and get us back to what's truly good and Hellenic.
Okay, LaRouche. Damn.
Okay. Yes. A little bit of LaRouche.
I guess LaRouche. No, I don't know. I but the Hellenic thing. Yeah, I don't know. Just okay, Nazi. I guess. We Germans feel an abstraction. We have all been ruined by history. A proposition which would destroy at its roots all hope of a future national culture. For any such hope grows out of the belief in the genuineness and immediacy of German feeling, out of the belief in a sound and whole inwardness. What is there left to hope for or believe in if the source of hope and belief is muddled? If inwardness has learned to make leaps, to dance, to paint itself, to express itself in abstractions with calculation, and gradually to lose itself? And how should the great productive spirit continue to endure among a people no longer secure in a unified inwardness, and which falls asunder into the cultivated with a miseducated and misled inwardness on the one hand, and the uncultivated with an inaccessible inwardness on the other? How should that spirit endure if unity of feeling among the people has been lost, and if, moreover, it knows that this feeling is falsified and retouched precisely among that part of the people which calls itself the cultured part, and lays claim to possession of the national artistic conscience?
Even if here and there an individual's taste and judgment has grown more subtle and sublimated, that is no advantage to him. He is racked by the knowledge that he has to speak as if he were to a sect, and is no longer needed in the body of his nation. Perhaps he now prefers to bury his treasure rather than suffer the disgust of being presumptuously patronized by a sect or an identicamp, while his heart is full of pity for all. The instinct of the nation no longer comes out to meet him. It is useless for him to stretch out his arms towards them in longing. What is there now left of the spirit but to turn his inspired hatred against that constraint, against the barriers erected in the so-called culture of his nation, so as to condemn what to him, as a living being and one productive of life, is destructive and degrading? Thus he exchanges a profound insight into his destiny for the divine joys of creation and construction, and ends the solitary man of knowledge and satiated sage. It is the most painful of spectacles. He who beholds it will know a sacred compulsion. Here, he says to himself, I must render aid. That higher unity in nature and soul of a people must again be created. That breach between inner and outer must again vanish under the hammer blows of necessity. But what weapons can he employ? What does he have but, again, his profound insight, propagating it and sowing it with hands he hopes to implant a need? And out of a vigorous need, there will one day arise a vigorous deed. And so as to leave no doubts of the source of my example of that need, that necessity, that perception, let me say expressly that it is for German unity in that highest sense that we strive, and strive more ardently than we do for political reunification, the unity of German spirit and life, after the abolition of the antithesis of form and content, of inwardness and convention.
Okay, so, well, I'll give it to Fisher. Fisher. He does sound like he's complaining about SJWs, but that's also because he sounds like a Nazi.
He actually is complaining about the same academic pedants. Yeah, like he has the same sort of complaint about academic pedants in the same way. Yeah. And, you know, I've just happened to have read this, like, more recently than I read Genealogy of Morals. But I don't recall Genealogy of Morals really being very different. I mean, if not worse. I don't actually think Jews are mentioned in Untimely Meditations, but I'm pretty sure that they're mentioned in Genealogy of Morals.
You can kind of see that is I mean, like he said, if you attack the vampire castle, the risk you run is being seen to be like a Nazi, but then maybe you shouldn't quote Nietzsche because he was kind of a proto-Nazi. And like, you know, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, that's what we would want to avoid, right? When attacking, storming the vampire castle, as we've said, is like there has to be a way of storming it that isn't like storming it as a Nazi. And not to say that's also, like, imminent, but like, I don't know.
I mean, also, like, I'm just not, like, satisfied with, like, you know, this, I feel like this analysis lacks complexity, and again, like, the whole idea of exiting the vampire castle is easy, and even Jonathan Harker, like, you know, a barrister from London, managed to do it, which is not very impressive. You know, he escaped the chains of woke idpol, even though he was like a weak, sickly barrister who had been drained of his blood and prematurely aged. I think that it's much more important, like Simon Belmont, to bravely go into the vampire castle and destroy all the lamps and get out the turkey legs and the, you know, various bottles of holy water and cross-shaped, like, shuriken to throw and, you know, use that to also, like, you know, I just don't I feel like that mention was more inspired by Castlevania than necessarily by this essay.
That's true.
I don't necessarily agree to his paradigm of what, like, the vampire castle is. Like, you know, I feel like if you listen to our 9/11 episode, a discussion of Dracularity, it's a bit more nuanced because it's not just like the spooky image that's like attention grabbing. Like, he doesn't explain in this essay about the vampire castle, like, why did he choose that metaphor just to invoke the medieval and say, like, oh, these people who are mean to me on Twitter, you know, for being white or something, which, you know, there's annoying people on Twitter, but, like, give me a break. Like,
well, you know, this might be a
vampire.
This might be a low blow, but it's like it would have made more sense in his framing if he had called it, say, the cathedral. Like the neo-reactionary, like Mencius Moldbug did, which I think they came out of like some of the same. I think he might have come out of the same university milieu that Nick Land went through.
K-punk.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, it's interesting. I mean, Mark Fisher kind of ended up on like the left flank of whatever that kind of thing was, but it's not surprised. I mean, it kind of does sound like he's talking about like the cathedral, the way like Mencius Mollberg kind of talked about it. It's like kind of the same. It's a very similar thing, except he's kind of trying to be like, well, you know, I'm a real leftist because I'm storming. I'm trying to escape the vampire castle, and you know, I don't know. It's I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in Fisher. I'd be kind of curious to like read a little more of his his content, but I feel like there's maybe certain lacks of there is a certain lack of like maybe specificity or complexity or whatever, maybe just some kind of leaps that like don't help flesh out this concept of the vampire castle. And I think that's even like floated into the bloodstream of people that are very, very like, you know, all about Fisher, that, you know, like these podcasters and stuff that cite him a lot of the time. I think there's like valuable things there, but I think there's also maybe some like, I don't know, undercooked formulations perhaps, or a lack of like more nuance and specificity.
The genealogy, I'm just paging through the genealogy of morals right now. Like, there's really some stuff in here. I won't read it just in the interest of time, but
yeah, well, maybe we'll do a whole Sus Nietzsche episode and like track his influence on culture, because you know, people...
just to say, like, if anyone was gonna say like, oh, well, Untimely Meditations, you know, that was in Nietzsche's early period, I think Genealogy of Morals might have been a bit later. I really don't know. Like, I'm not Nietzsche expert, but I'm expert enough to know that is like sort of damning of a reference in that, but it was significantly before. But so just in case anybody says like, well, you know, that's from his earlier writings, you know, A Genealogy of Morals, you know, well, you know, A Genealogy of Morals is probably worse.
Yeah.
I mean, again, like, I think that there's definitely some truth like to what he's saying. Like, I think that like he's identified something that is you know, a real phenomenon that I feel like we've given like some attention to like in the past, like some of what he was talking about, but at the same time, like, you know, like the canonical status of this, like among like certain people, like it's not like, you know, it's something that is, I don't know, but
I think there's more like there's more work to be built on, I think, with some of these concepts that he started to play around with and introduce, that maybe, you know, sadly he's not with us anymore to do it, but I feel like we should, you know, try to I don't know.
Sorry to be so mean to him after he's dead, but
it's okay. So. I mean, I think he experienced some of these dynamics like happening, and it definitely lines up with things that like I've like observed or occasionally interacted with, and these are kind of trends that are that are influential and maybe they do serve certain roles for capital and perform a kind of you know, entrapment kind of thing on people, and they do obfuscate class and all these other things, and like I think there has been
Yeah, it's interesting, like, again, like, you know, if in capitalist realism he mentions climate change as a way to, it's very, you know, as a way to get outside some of these traps of the capitalist ontology. It's interesting to see, like, as we discussed, like, that very process of capture happening with the issue of climate change in the same way that it's happened with, you know, feminism and with, you know, race consciousness. So
that's interesting that he said that climate change was an opportunity for, like, a kind of epistemological break from, like, capitalist realism. Is that what he was saying? But like, it's funny when he like, so it basically not long after his death, it got co-opted by like the liberal NGO like capitalist establishment, and then like their biggest most viral moment, I'm thinking of Extinction Rebellion, is when a bunch of working class people in like East London like beat the shit out of some guy who like tried to stop a commuting train in the morning in the name of climate change. So like, that says to me that like, A, they're going to co-opt whatever resistance there is to this, and B, that has a potential to alienate even more like working class people who are just like have their heads down and are like working, and like trying to survive and like, just have get a little bit ahead and like, et cetera, and then being like completely kind of almost like not even apathetic but almost hostile to certain kinds of like liberal performative protests that now, of course, if he was still alive, he might very well point out that Extinction Rebellion is like complete bullshit and this is going to backfire. Like the Vampire Castle has now captured climate change and that sucks and et cetera. Yeah. But I think like that it's not enough to say, I don't think that panned out that like, working class people are going to be conscious about around the world, are like very, very clued in and passionate and politically activated, or like could easily be activated by like climate change fears. I think it's got to get worse before that happens.
Well, I think there's two sides of this in a way, because on one hand, like on the other hand, like to say like, oh, climate change now, I do think that there is a certain opportunity in climate change, because I think that it is true that climate change is an indictment of like really of capitalism in many ways, like the capitalist like appropriation of like the discourse around climate change to basically like sell products, perpetuate itself in the same way that does of other things, which really like are certain movements like there's definitely trends in these other movements that we talked about that are critical of capitalism that I think there's potential, there's actually positive potential in them as well. But I think that and I think that there's actually in a way you could say the Vampire Castle, it's part maybe a machination or a twisty cord of the Vampire Castle to be like, oh well, like this climate change stuff, like that's lib and bourgeois, and the working class doesn't care about that. They only care about being racist. So
sure,
like,
yeah,
we can't mention climate change because then we won't reach the workers who are all racist. Like
interesting, yeah. There's a whole kinds of ways that you could play with that, and basically,
which I think is like that is also like kind of like a straw man or like a burlesque of the reality. But I think that's definitely a trend with some. Maybe not Mark Fisher himself, but some of the Mark Fisher acolytes, not to be confused with our own acolytes, but, some of them would be like, oh, well, their image of, like, the good worker is someone who's like, well, he's white, he hates, like, he's a Republican, basically. He's like
hates immigrants, doesn't support trans lives.
And he's like this totem that I can invoke, or this talisman that I can use to... ward myself against like having to care about like anything except for like my own like weird reactionary beliefs,
exactly.
But and it's just like, okay, well, yeah, so Greta's annoying, like, she's like a neoliberal, like, plot, like, does that mean that, like, now we are not going to care about climate change? Are we going to listen to Catherine Austin Fitz, like, that it's all an op? Like,
well, exactly.
That's true. Like,
then you sit back and don't have to do anything.
We're just going to, like, blithely, like, yeah, exactly, just not do anything, like, all right, like, so, I mean, yeah, but, I think that there's different dimensions to it, but I don't know. I think that, like, on one hand, like, I would say almost, like, there's a difference between, like, being concerned about the Twitter storms or whatever and, like, noticing how and observing how, like, and I really do think that, like, for the most part, there are people who have, like, their sort of interests invested in that stuff. Like, the people who are like, oh, Watchmen came out, racism is solved or whatever. Like, those people were never serious. The people who actually are serious, like, aren't satisfied by that.
Yeah.
Like, so, like, like, by the same time, I feel like, at a certain point, like, you just need to, like, it is annoying that there are people who are like that, who, like, try to sedate or anesthetize people with, like, these sort of fake gestures.
Yeah.
But, like, there's still people who aren't, and to, just to say, like, oh, well, I think that there's a distinction between that and also, like, the people who are being mean to you on Twitter because, like, you said class or whatever, and they thought that was being racist in some way. I mean, maybe it was because you were ranting and raving about Nietzsche, like that they said that, but you know, I don't know. But
yeah,
anyway, like,
well, at the time he was defending Russell Brand in a way that like I can't even remember like what the dynamics were back in 2013 where Russell
or something.
Yeah, it's like Russell Brand is like, you know, he was like saying he was a communist, but like he, you know, had problematic things with women, and you know, Mark Fisher was saying it's because he's working class and they're trying to like shut him down, and it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, I think there's probably something to that,
it's the same
but like
thing where it's like, oh, you know, working class people hate women, you know, you just have to deal with, you know, like it's like, okay, like, you know, and you know, I'm not saying that there's no situation where like, you know, people's sort of sensibilities about like, you know, that type of stuff can get in the way of like communicating with people across class or cultural divides. Like that's obviously true, but it's just kind of like, you know, in a way, like log off almost, you know, like if you're not going to organize on Twitter, like, so.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
Log off from the Vampire's Castle.
Yeah, log off from the Vampire's Castle.
All right, we can move on.
Okay, we can move on.
Ambivalent assessment, you know, I'm not like condemning. I think that, you know, there's good stuff in there, and, you know, I'm sure, like, I'm not super up on his work, so I'm sure there's, like, a lot of stuff of value in it. I'm just, like, being, you know, like, that's the tact I took. That was my impression. So there you go. There you have it.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. Any last thoughts, or we can move on.
Yeah. No. I think I'll probably maybe read a little more Fisher just so I have like a better specific handle on it. I'm curious about like how
I'm intrigued by the weird and the eerie, and I'm intrigued by capitalist realism as well.
I'm just intrigued by like his outsized like influence in a certain sphere of like kind of media, of like independent media, like podcasting and like sort of like Twitter, and how his work has been almost more than anybody else, like in the last I'd say 5 years, is like constantly being referenced and invoked and all these things. And I think like there's a reason for it in like a positive sense, because Zero Books, like what I think he was published under for a while, and they're all still in kind of like a Mark Fisher frame in terms of like how they're looking at the world. And I think there's like certain benefits to that, but I think there's also certain like shortcomings that or maybe like, you know, areas that are worth critiquing in it that have led to maybe like a little bit too of like a reductive, like I really do think like the kind of saying like id pol or like anti-id pol is like too reductive and like one dimensional, and I think it doesn't actually get at the problem they're trying to like try to transcend, of like how do we like kind of reconcile the kind of class-based analysis and then kind of a lot of this like intersectionality stuff, because like a good class analysis, if you're really gonna like try to go in a full like Marxist sense, like should be kind of intersectional, because it's supposed to take everything into account. And there's a lot of, you know, theory that's been done over like the 20th century that kind of tried to like advance that. So there is room for it, you know, I think, to do it in an authentic way. I don't think like, I think, you know, people being called class reductionists is also like like a little bit overused slur, I guess, you know, sometimes like thrown around on Twitter. But like, I think some people are almost like falling into the Vampire Castle trap of like embracing class reductionism because they think everything else is like id pol. But like I think you're going to end up in a cul-de-sac if you do that, because you do need to like engage with these like more sophisticated conceptions of like all these different identitarian categories, and like the ideal thing would be kind of like to bring them together into some kind of like functional political corpus of some kind that can like work together while like tolerating and acknowledging one another's differences, and you know, but also be united around a common cause. You don't want people just to be balkanized into identity groups. Obviously, that's not a successful like strategy, you know, for like mass politics. And so, but you have to be. This is like a kind of complex issue to kind of and you know, there's even like stuff that, you know, like even those people kind of don't talk about who are really into Fisher, and maybe Fisher doesn't talk about as much, but like, you know, there's even like the class like binary between like people living in like the imperial core and then people living in like the global south, like on a class level that's like, you know, that's worth paying attention to as well. So not everything that even from a class standpoint, like almost everybody in America is like maybe could be perceived as a kind of labor aristocracy compared to like a poor global South country. So like there's that aspect of it as well that needs to be reckoned
still
with.
in the psychological torture devices created by Christianity.
Yes, that's it. That's
so
it. Yeah.
they're not worth talking to.
Well, first of all, if you are going to film cross-class solidarity and cross-ethnic, cultural, whatever solidarity thing with people in Africa or South America, you might need to cool it on the dunking on. Right.
Yeah, no, the best way to reach those people is to Nietzsche. I think that's probably the most popular, definitely more popular than Christianity or priests in the global South or in Africa for sure.
You might want to take the edgy Gen X dunking on religious Christianity and like put it on the shelf, and not take it with you when you go evangelize. I mean, I definitely do think that a lot of this. I think that on both ends, both sides, but I think that like a lot of this, because I just see like so much of the discourse like converging on this like annoying like culture war that like I just feel so fatigued by between like the about like the new thing that people say is like the woke stuff. You know, that's a new word. It used to be SJW. Now that people then it was
idpol.
Now it's more woke. Yeah,
which is really funny because woke, like really, we saw a huge transformation in the usage of woke from being a term that was something that really was appropriated by the right, from something that like originally started, I guess, really probably like in like black circles.
Probably around 2014. I don't want to say for sure, but
actually I was just re-listening to in the grotto. I was re-listening to someone had mentioned K Reno, so I just sometime this week re-listened to. A little bit of my favorite K Reno tracks kind of prompted by that. And, one of his tracks, K Reno, definitely not someone to walk on eggshells or put into correctness, was definitely said, stay woke, and, when I hear
what
that.
What year
now,
did that come out?
Like James Lindsay and like stuff. I don't know. I don't remember exactly. I think that it was like 2016, actually.
Okay,
honestly.
so that wouldn't have been the first reference.
I think it was talking about
I can't say for sure that I can't say for sure, but I think the term was popular. At least had a big viral come up. With D. Ray McKesson getting arrested in Ferguson, and he might have even had a shirt that says "Stay Woke," and like there's a very famous photograph of him like staring into the camera like a model as he like got arrested. And of course that guy is like an op, like for sure, like an NGO grifter person. And I feel like that he helped like maybe help launch it. I'm sure it was an existent kind of phrase before that, but then I think he imbued it with a certain kind of meaning and attitude, and then it was like appropriated like and turned back against like the very thing he was promoting, and now it's like pretty much a term of derision. I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. But I do feel the urge to like get beyond this a little bit, like try to find a way to get beyond this endless kind of like post-left like like let's have Angela Nagel on to talk about how
it's just very it's just annoying how like that is like under the surface of everything, like always converging, like someone appears to be talking about something else with their theoretical concept of like, again, it's from 2013, so but like someone appears to be talking about like their theoretical concept of the vampire castle, but really they're complaining about how like people on Twitter are too woke, it's just like, and like I feel like there's a lot of situations like that where someone appears to be talking about one thing like something like sophisticated in some way, but then it's just the same old crap about the stupid culture war issue where it's like is it okay to be white, like what do you say, it's okay to be white, like
say it,
it's like okay,
come on. No, like, exactly. And I think this is around the time that it was like starting with like Suey Park and like Lauren Chief Elk and all those people. They really, who were all like probably like kind of Lauren Chief Elk was like an op. She was a cop. Crypto Cuttlefish exposed it.
I mean, Suey Park, she became like a Gamergator eventually,
yes.
Right? She like actually had her own anti-woke conversion moment where
Suey Park did?
I think so.
I don't think Suey Park did. No, she deleted her account after trying to cancel Colbert. That was her thing.
No, she came back.
Really?
I just remember her coming out as being like, concerned about like social justice ideology, and like I remember like some person saying like, now that you've realized the evils of SJWism, can we confess our thirst for you?
Ooh, okay, wow. All right. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't surprise me that they would like flip sides necessarily. It just feels very op-ish, but maybe, maybe Mark Fisher got kind of like caught in the op of like, and he was really, it kind of like it assumed central importance in his mind because all of a sudden there was all this kind of woke stuff happening on Twitter.
The Colbert Report, especially by that point, the Colbert Report like was not funny and annoying and probably even more of an op than any of those people were. So
yeah,
like again, it's like a whole thing where it's like it's a Jimmy Dore AOC situation where it's like I don't really care. Like,
cancel them all. Cancel everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, I agree. Like, I kind of do think it should be canceled. I mean, again, I guess what happened afterwards was worse. Like, where he just, like, cries every night about, like, Trump. But,
wearing a sweater in front of, like, a fireplace. Yeah. Yeah, very weird.
Right.
Okay. I think I think we could probably wrap up there.
We can move on. That's, again, like, we're just doing the same thing of getting into this. But I'm just saying, like, this stuff is like a little bit like chill. I mean, whatever. But,
yeah. Okay, so we're at
interesting piece.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We're at 3 hours and 46 minutes right now.
And we're halfway through. Yeah.
We're halfway through.
Same thought.
I was thinking, would you be around tomorrow maybe to do like a shorter sesh to like finish these questions maybe? I think this will be split into it. I think this might be our first 2-part Q&A.
This might have to be. It might by necessity be our first 2-part Q&A.
Yeah.
That might have to go down.
I never thought I'd have this much fun in North Korea. I assumed that only a couple of days would be enough, but I was so wrong. I would love to stay here for many weeks. And I think a huge part of the greatness to this trip are the 3 guys and our lovely driver. Without you guys, this trip wouldn't have been the same. So, 감사합니다. 사랑해 친구. 보고 싶어. We have just a small gift for the 3 of you. So, thank you again. And would anyone else like to say a few words?
Together? Our soldiers liberated the second camp of the enemy, Saturn. So when our soldiers liberated the city, William Lin, the commander of U.S. 24th Infantry Division, was captured alive. The U.S. 24th Infantry Division was very famous division as Victorious Division. So this commander of the Victorious Division was captured alive in the operation. So later I will explain about the operation in detail through the big panorama.